Hello, good morning again. Thank you for coming. I know medyo traffic today, pero salamat pa rin sa inyo na mga nagpunta from different schools in Metro Manila, around Metro Manila, no? Anyway, let's start the program. To start, I'm gonna give the floor to the FOCAP president. If you don't know, Foreign Correspondents Association of the Philippines is, it's an organization of journalists who works for foreign publications. No? So andyan yung wires, newspapers like the New York Times wires, yung AFP, AP, Reuters, etc. So, I'm gonna give the floor. Wala na tayong, sorry, wala na tayong ano, no? Wala na tayong, dapat ba may, ano, invocation? Ikaw na lang, ano? Secular, okay, sige. Alright. So I'll give the floor to Mikhail Flores. He's the current president of FOCAP. Okay, he's gonna give us, some very inspiring speech.
Good morning. Thank you, Jess. Parang mahirap yung inspiring speech. I'm just here to welcome you guys. So good morning. Welcome to the second Romeo Gacad lecture on visual journalism. How many of you were here last year? I'm just curious. Okay, so we have one. So welcome back. So last year, the Foreign Correspondents Association of the Philippines, or FOCAP, hosted the inaugural lecture in honor of Romy Gacad, the legendary Agence France Presse photographer who died in 2021. Romeo Gacad, whom we fondly call Romy or Tata Romy, joined AFP in 1985, and he was a longtime member of FOCAP. Described as a man of few words, Tata Romy let his images speak the truth. He covered various events from the fall of former President Marcos Sr. To natural disasters and to conflict zones such as Iraq, East Timor, Afghanistan, and Myanmar. So this year, we are fortunate to have Jake Soriano of AFP, my former colleague. I'm now with Reuters, but I used to work for AFP. And Carl Joe Javier of Data and AI Ethics PH. So they're joining us to tackle challenges associated with artificial intelligence, particularly AI-generated images and videos. And the topic is quite timely because we've seen in the news reports in recent days about one senator doubling down on sharing an AI video about the support for the impeachment, or against the impeachment rather, of Vice President Sara Duterte. So also special thanks to our visuals guru in FOCAP, Jess Aznar of the New York Times and Get Images. Let's give Jess a round of applause. So he's the one behind and the preparations for this. Yeah, thank you for shepherding this project for the last 2 years. And welcome again to this year's forum. So I hope we get to learn from each other today. Thank you and welcome.
All right, ang tangkat ni Mika. All right, thank you, President. Okay, so just a brief introduction of the Romeo Gacad visual journalism program, no, or lecture that we have. So, as Mika said, this started only last year, but it started last year, but it has been like years in the making, So we noticed that the communication sphere, or the news sphere that we are in, is fastly becoming very, very visual. I mean, lahat ng lahat ng part ng buhay natin ngayon is visual na, no? Sobrang pagbukas mo ng phone, is visual. No? Pagbukas mo ng mga apps mo, whether it's communication apps like WhatsApp, Viber, etc. Kahit nga yung simple text, yung may MMS na, no? Pagbukas mo ng social media, it's all visual, no? Especially in the news. Yung mga web pages na tinitingnan natin, mga news web pages, they're all very, very visual. So everything now is very visual. But at the same time, so we just realized that, you know, part ng industry ng journalism, it is visual journalism or photojournalism that it's we are somehow lacking, no, lacking some education, lacking some formal trainings. We have to go back to the basics to learn the, you know, ethics, the rules, etc., etc. No? And so we're here now. So we've come up with this lecture program that focuses mainly on visual journalism. So it's high time that we talk about visual journalism and the nuances and you know, everything in it. So, without further ado, I'm gonna be introducing you our speakers for today. We have two. Kanina yung nakita yung clips, that was last year, no? So we had, it was very successful. We had a guest from Getty Images, Associated Press, and AFP, and Reuters as well, no, as speakers. Now we have two speakers to join us today. Okay, the first speaker that we have is Mr. Carl Joe Javier. So Carl Joe, Mr. Javier, is a multifaceted leader at the intersection of ethics, storytelling, and innovation. Currently, the Executive Director and Chief AI Ethicist of Data and AI Ethics, PH. Carl advocates for the responsible and human-centered use of artificial intelligence in society. He is also a writer, certified human-centered coach, and educator with who teaches creative writing at the Ateneo de Manila University. Carl served as CEO of Puma Podcast, if you can remember Puma Podcast, no? So Carl is one of the people behind it. Pioneering, it was the pioneering podcast production company, no? Where he led its growth into a globally recognized storytelling platform with a career spanning journalism, academia, social enterprise, and publishing. Carl has contributed to meaningful impact through both creative and technical writing. No? His editorial leadership in relaunching Anino Comics, okay, so he's into comics as well, helped revitalize Filipino graphic storytelling, earning national literary awards and acclaim. An accomplished author, Carl has published books of fiction, essays, poetry, and his work includes projects across print, broadcast, and multimedia platforms. He holds a BA in English Studies and an MA in Creative Writing from the University of the Philippines. Through his advocacy and artistry, Carl continues to shape conversations on technology, culture, and ethics in the digital age. Okay, and after Carl Joe, we have Mr. Jake Soriano. So Jake flew from Hong Kong. No, he's Filipino, but for 2 years now he's working for AFP headquarters in Hong Kong. No, so he flew in here to join us, you know, and to share his knowledge. So Jake Soriano, he's the deputy head of AFP's Asia Pacific Digital Investigation Team. First joined the agency's Manila Bureau in 2019 as a fact-checker reporter before moving to Hong Kong. He previously worked for Philippine broadcaster GMA News, was editor at CheckPH and Vera Files, and a journalism lecturer at the University of the Philippines and De La Salle University. So, without further ado, I'll give the floor to Mr. Carl Jo, who's gonna give us the first lecture. Okay.
Hello, hello. Good morning. Sige, start tayo with the deck. So, as we're loading this up, I have had to revise this deck multiple times in the last 2 days because of new things that keep happening. You know? I'm sure that I'll be playing a couple of videos. We'll probably have seen some of these, but they provide interesting context. This is the title, AI is Generating Interesting Times. Also because AI often gives you a very unoriginal title, so I shot for one that is very unoriginal. Sige, let's go to the first slide, please. Load up natin yung NBA Finals ad. So anyone who's watching the NBA, I think this was game 4. This is the first fully AI ad that screened on American primetime. Yung finals ad, please. Yan.
Indiana gonna win, baby!
We're in Florida asking people what they put their money on! I'm all in on OKC!
Indiana got that dog in them!
Will egg prices go up this month?
I think we'll hit $20. How many hurricanes do you think we'll have this year?
Kalshi lets you legally trade on anything, anywhere in the U.S.
OKC!
Indy! OKC!
Hey, so
Welcome to...
and I think it's a big problem everywhere, lalo na sa Pilipinas in gambling. But that was an incredibly unhinged ad. Tapos that was the prompt that the ad agency was given. Make something so unhinged that people will talk about it. You kind of see how AI operates, even if you see some of the local stuff. The camera angles are so based on the first-person point of view shot. So there are things that we can spot, but really there's just the speed of it and the immediacy of the feeling of that ad. It really feels different. And I think that's one thing to think about is if you were going to shoot something, how long does it take to set it up, all this stuff, versus the speed of this thing and the relative cost. Kung isipin nyo sa Pilipinas, how much does it cost to mount a video shoot for a commercial, and then yung ad placements nyo, so on and so forth. You'd think that if I were a brand trying to put up an ad, it would probably cost me mga 2 million pesos. And at this point, it's going to cost virtually nothing for ad agencies to go out and do this. So, and the speed at which it can be done. So, next we have the, actually you can go to the next slide. Let's see if it plays para hindi na tayo mag-click out. Tingnan natin kung maglo-load. Okay. Wala. Okay. Balik. Sige. So this one is the one we've probably all seen.
Pwede ba kitang matanong? Yes po. Pabor ka ba sa impeachment ni VP Sara? No. Bakit? Because it is obviously politically motivated. I mean, maraming may confidential funds sa gobyerno, iba nga billions pa. But why single out the VP? They want justice, but their justice is selective. If these politicians are really serious in cleaning up the government, then investigate all at isama na nila mga sarili nila.
Right? And if you're watching it on a tiny phone and you're one of those people who doesn't wear headphones, that's annoying, dude. Mag-headphones kayo. But diba, you're out in public, people are just wearing headphones. Hard to detect whatever these mistakes are. I know that if you go online, you can find people who will point out, oh, kita mo yung kamay, tapos yung ganito, all this stuff. But really, use case for individuals. It's pretty hard to detect when it is this small and this fast. Because how big are our screens, right? And often, one of the findings is actually most people will watch video in mute and with caption. So again, all of these factors that make it much harder to detect than people say. And then the last one, this one is, ang bilis lang. So kalalabas lang ng isa, meron na agad to.
Hoy, mga senador, AI lang ako pero mas nag-iisip ako ng tama sa inyo. Maawa naman kayo sa mga kapwa niyong Pilipino. Kami ang pagsilbihan niyo, wag ang mga politiko. Bato at Robin, umayos kayo. Lalo ka na, Cheese.
Okay, so, and so we see that these things are not confined to any one camp. No? And there will be, just as there are stupid comment sections where there are things that you can agree and disagree with, eto may attempt pa siya at ethics, no? Kasi sinabi niya na AI siya, very, very clearly. But we need to have a very public conversation about how we deploy these things. And I'm happy that we're all here because I hope that this is the start of many, many conversations. Because, you know, the thing with technology is usually the technology comes and then the rules follow. And so we need to start setting up the rules. We need to start setting the standards. And if we're hoping that the old rules will hold, we already know that they won't. Sobrang bilis eh. Right, so next slide, please. Last fun thing before we get to the serious stuff. Yan. Ito yung comment ba to? And then last night, my co-founder sa Data and AI Ethics PH, si Doc Ligot, he did an image generation workshop. So these are all just like ChatGPT generated images of Bato doing a camera. He sent me like 10, but these were the 3 most fun. But this sense nga na, I love it because I posted this one. Tapos may tumawag sa akin ng bobo din. So, di ba, manang, wala kang magagawa eh. And then you don't know if the person calling you bobo is a bot or a troll or paid or actually a real person na bobo, ganun. But you don't know. So this is really what we're dealing with at this point, and it's this fast. I don't know how many of you are playing around with, who's playing around with bots, ChatGPT, Claude, XAI, which is awful, ganyan. If you've ever used AI inside of your WhatsApp or your Facebook Messenger, there's embedded llama in all of those. So anyone who's playing with these things, you know how fast it is. Ubuso na lang ng token eh, for ChatGPT. You run out of tokens every day if you're not on a paid plan, even if you're on paid. But this is how easily this can happen. Honestly, I removed it. I made a bunch of deepfakes of myself. I wanted to see how fast I could do it for me. And all you need is a Discord, and that's it. You get a Discord, you sign up for some face swapping, and then those face swappers are very good at what they do. I won't go into the technical of how you make this stuff or how diffusion models work. But the point being that for someone who has zero skill, zero technical capacity, all you need is 5 minutes and a Discord account, and you can start making deepfakes of yourself or anyone else for that matter. So next slide, please. So yeah, so AI isn't coming; it's already here. Yun yung, diba, there are warnings, but these warnings are coming well too late. And part of the conversation continues to be resistance. Like, are we going to use it? Are we not going to use it? And I understand, and I want to acknowledge all of the concerns embedded within the question of should I use AI, particularly the environmental concerns, which are very real. But at the same time, if you know that everyone else is going to use this, how are you going to position yourself? And even at the very least, how do you resist something that you don't understand? So your capacity to sort of build a consciousness and an awareness of this necessitates engagement with it. And it's very different, and I will, anyone who's never used one, right? This is the difference of you have never used and you've put in a prompt and it gave you something, it's almost magical. And the thing is, if it stays at the level of magic, then magic can be used to fool us. But the more that you use technologies, the more that you understand the underlying infrastructures and all of this stuff, the less it is magic and the more it is a technology for you to use. So yun yung big thought there. So it's already here. Actually, we projected that the last elections might be affected by AI. Thankfully, they were not, but the public discourse is already being targeted. Next slide, please. And so this came out last week. So akala ko ito yung magiging main stuff ko. And then the Bato stuff came out. But this came out last week. This is a threat report from OpenAI. So OpenAI released five case studies of identified threats that used OpenAI. The important thing to know is that when you think, gumamit sila ng AI, usually that means it is an outward-facing thing. Ay, nahuli ko, AI yan. But what OpenAI identifies is that AI was used throughout the entire process of this influence campaign. From conceptualization, to messaging, to the creation of the comment. So, what I guess we can presume here, kasi huling-huli sila, is they're using a free plan, right? Kasi medyo matatago mo kung sino ka, pero basa agad kung sino yung user. They were able to block this user. So, think of what they could have done if they themselves were more savvy with the AI that they were using. And again, this is people who work in a professional, PR agency, trying to seed narratives, and understanding that there are many ways to use this tool. And even if you had individuals write the actual posts, the ability of the AI to generate marketing plans and such is so powerful that we need to understand it. Next, please. And so, yan yung results. So what they found was that while there was a lot of commenting, it was hard to assess whether there was actual impact from these comments, which is probably good, but remember that this is the first case that we've seen. And so it will only get better. Ethan Mollick, a researcher who wrote Co-Intelligence, he says, like, you have to imagine, right now, we're able to spot it. Ay, ang bobo naman niya, tignan mo yung daliri, ganun. Or, I can tell that AI wrote that. And what he asks us to, to look at is, what happens if this is as good as AI gets? Like, if this is the best rolled out version, sobrang lakas na niya. But if it gets marginally better, what does that look like? And if it gets way better, what does it look like? And I'm removing yung parang more sci-fi conversations about AGI from this. Just thinking about how much better will this technology be, 6 months from now, 1 year from now, if you've been using the models and you saw what happened when deep research came in, like the ability for this thing to function is so high, even when you factor in, for example, my recent, if anyone is interested in that there's an Apple paper that looks at the limitations of AI. Basically, what they say is that once you reach a certain number of tokens, the AI logic collapses. So, but if you're already using AI, you know that's true, right? At some point it forgets. At some point it can't handle the number of queries that have gone back and forth. Right? So there are limitations, and my general thought there is, it's not about identifying the limitations and saying, sumasabit pala, hindi ko na gagamitin, right? Almost all technology has failure points. And so, if your car breaks down and you don't use cars because they break down every once in a while, right? So it's the same thing here. The benefits of using AI are lost if you just find a failure point and say, I'm not willing to use it because of that. On the other end of it, we all know that AI hallucinates and it is a probability machine. So, nandun din yung other failure points. So, I'm here to talk about journalism. Visual journalism was the call. I think we know that visual is one of the easiest attack vectors here. But I do want to talk about journalism in general, because there are certain things that, as a discipline, we need to be talking about. So whether you've been a journalist for a long time, or if you're starting out, these are things that we need to know. Having run a media startup for a few years, these are things that we're within our own experience. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so things that we need to learn from the past. And when I say the past, it's like probably right before you guys were born, but when I was starting in Journ. So one is, fact checking is important, but it isn't enough. I think we really need to understand this, because there was a point where we thought that fact checking would be enough. Diba? That if you gave people the right facts, then they would see that they are wrong, and then tapos na. But people will believe what they want to believe. literally, bato, saying, AI yan, o hindi AI, like, sang-ayon ako sa mensahe. Okay. Tapos. And the thing is, this isn't to say that Bato is an unintelligent man, but it is to say that this is a very human behavior response, right? We will gravitate towards messages that appeal to us, and when you are fact-checked, it doesn't feel good. Di ba? Anyone who's ever tried to fact-check their tita, nagalit yung tita mo, di ba? So, ganun lagi. Like, we need to understand what the human response will be, especially for something like this, especially for loaded things like this. And yeah, Tita on Viber is so fast at sharing misinformation, and the speed at which that is shared is going to be faster than a fact check. And that's sort of, it's a thing we've been saying over and over, right? The speed of a truth versus the speed of a fact, the speed of a fact versus the speed of misinformation, disinformation. And even when you aren't attempting to mislead people, the speed of that at which something spicy goes out, right? Ganong kabilis ang chismis, di ba? Lalo na kung mainit o ganyan, and especially with politics, especially with very hot topics. So one, fact-checking is important, but it's not enough. So while we continue to need fact-checkers, especially as journalists, we are going to have to find different modalities to deal with all of this information. I'm going to have some ideas later. Journalists need to lead in building trust amid AI as opposed to fumbling with it. So I think it was maybe 2 years ago, yung GMA newscasters, did you guys see that? Sportscasters, right? They put out those sportscasters, and people got very angry. Very negative reactions just to the thought of it. And, among journalists, it was problematic. I'm sure that for them it was problematic. So this is something to consider. The journalistic organizations that should have integrity, that should be leading, are trying to lead, but they may not be taking the best steps forward. That's one. One of the early big cases was yung CNET. If you're familiar with CNET, it's like a tech website where you go for tech reviews and stuff. And so one day they decided to replace their homepage with all AI written articles, and 70% of the information was inaccurate. And they basically crashed their credibility. Right? So again, attempts to use AI, but failures. And then, let's admit it, like mainit na mainit ang dugo ng mga tao sa journalist. And so when journalists make a mistake like this, they really go hard at it. Among those is this recent one. So yung letter C dito, yung summer reading list. So it was a reading list that was generated using AI, and then it was printed, kasi in the US may print syndication. So you can have one article that prints in multiple local magazines or newspapers. So, nasa dyaryo pa siya na AI-generated piece. It hallucinated half of the books on the list. So, what are the failure points? The person who used AI to generate the list, but also the editor who did not check, but also mahirap manisin ng editor, as most of us here know if you've been an editor. There's so many articles coming in, there's only so little time to work with stuff, so you're trying to catch everything that you can, but this is egregious. And so we are already in a space where trust in journalism is constantly being attacked, and if we're doing things like this, it makes it even more difficult to build our credibility. And last thing is that, resisting AI won't make it go away. Because I came from a newsroom and a background that was like, let's just hope this TikTok thing goes away. Or it's just a fad. Or hindi naman natin kailangan gawin yan. Or, it'll be fine. Let's just stick to what we're doing right now. And we know where things have wound up with just staying where we are. So the next slide is going to be thoughts of a rant, and I'm just going to encapsulate what I'm thinking here, which is basically that the last 20 years of digital transformation have promised us a democratization, like Again, I'm old, so I was on Blogspot and GeoCities and these things that you'll read about now. Vintage internet, no? But you know, the promise of citizen journalism, especially during the time of Twitter, the promise of all of this stuff, like in the 2010s, you saw this, you know, parang this Obama era in the US commitment to social media for good. And you even had most of the social media or big tech companies funding journalism programs. And a lot of that funding has disappeared. And in fact, a lot of the excitement that they showed journalists, because journalism was a way to drive people towards the platforms when these platforms were starting in the late 2000s. They invited and actively participated with journalism organizations, essentially convincing us to give up our platforms, whether website or and get people used to social media feeds. And then they would access us through the social media feeds. But you know that they've been downranking or throttling news content. For example, in Canada, all news content is deprioritized because of certain laws that were passed by the Canadian government. So they can't get access to news that they need, and people are so used to accessing information through Facebook. Problema din naman natin yan sa Pilipinas, right? Facebook is free. And journalism is expensive. And that's one of those things that we're looking at now, is that they really brought us there. They really convinced us that they had a commitment to making sure that democracy was good and all this stuff. But once challenges came in, and you see where big tech stands right now, there's been a large-scale abandonment of these. And even, I guess it's still fair to say, even when you see that big tech platforms are willing to fund specific grants or journalism programs and stuff like that, if you look at that willingness compared to the amount of money that they're making from other things, or the amount of money that can be used by political campaigns, sobrang liit lang. So it's really an asymmetrical battleground for journalists. Again, next slide, please. Sorry. End of rant. Tech platforms. Nice before, not nice now. So the way I'm drawing this up is like the challenges are also opportunities for us as journalists. And I want us to think, you know, this is under FOCAP. So FOCAP has access to a lot of the big news organizations, but I also want us to be thinking about small media, new media organizations. What are young journalists like you guys going to do? Is there an outfit that is made up of 2 or 3 young journalists that can make something that is potentially as effective? So challenge number 1 that I want to talk about is revenue squeeze. So really big problem, probably not something that you guys are super aware of, because if you're not writing for big organizations yet, you probably haven't felt it. But big or small organizations have been affected by a lot of the funding squeeze, a lot of that driven by the chainsawing of US aid. No? So basically US aid was a program that did fund a lot of pro-democracy and journalism all over the world. You also see this, like in the US is trying to cut their funding to Radio Free Europe. The US is trying to cut funding to PBS and NPR. And we are downstream of all of these consequences. Because, for example, you're a Filipino organization that is receiving funding from one of these big orgs, and then NPR gets cut. They have more incentive to save NPR than to save your little newsroom. So they'll divert the funding there. So the cash flows are changing, particularly this year. And this is not just journalism, this is grant funding overall. And we all know that grant funding is so important for a lot of the things that people need, a lot of the services that people need, but that government is unable to provide. So dwindling revenue from B2C, so from the business to consumer, which is basically to say, hindi bumibili yung mga tao ng journalism. We're not paying directly for it. When's the last time that you bought a newspaper? When's the last time that you saw a newspaper? So, and then how many of us have news subscriptions and to which organizations, and are any of us supporting any local news organizations, right? So any money that, that media, journalism is getting from individuals is dwindling. Ad business, especially online, online ad business is decimated. So, very simply put, bakit sila maglalagay ng ads sa X, media organization, podcast group, whatever else, when they could just send a care package to an influencer and get much more impact. Diba? By virtue of news being news, it usually gets about half the viewership in general of something that is entertainment. If that, right? If you're making news. And then, the kind of news that we want to be making, the kind of journalism that we want to be reporting and sharing, the important stuff will probably, by virtue of it being important, be not as necessarily engaging. And therefore, for businesses that are doing advertisements, the incentive to put support behind news organizations is much, much lower now, right? Because they find out that they support this progressive news organization. Okay, so what happens to my business if I get called out by some other side? Diba? And we know how media pressure happens here politically. And then the last one is, journalism has been a mostly supply-side economics model. And what does this mean, really? It means that for the bulk of the history of journalism, it's been, we write what's important and then people will buy it. Because people needed news, so they bought newspapers and they bought magazines and they bought all that stuff. And so we always think, if we make a really good story, people will buy it. And then ang nangyayari, sobrang galing natin. Like, ang daming magaling na journalists writing magagaling na mga stuff. And so sobrang daming stuff that people actually don't know what to buy. And then the thing is, sobrang daming libre, right? And so, don't know if you are guilty of this, but I will admit to it. Once you hit your maximum articles with one news outlet, but you need that story, you go look for it in a different news outlet reporting the same story, and so you can get by and learn what you need to learn without having to pay anything. And then hopefully they get ad revenue. And again, how much is ad revenue at this point? Right? So from a user behavior standpoint, this is kind of great because we get access to news for free. But for news organizations that don't want to do legitimate reporting, paano na? So thoughts, because I don't have answers, I just have thoughts. What are new ways that journalism can be funded? I don't know yet. But I have had successful brand partnerships where our news can remain free, but by doing brand partnerships on very important topics that we actually felt strongly about, like climate, gender equity, things like that, we were able to partner with big foundations. Maybe, I don't know. Are there other formulations? Are there other ways that we can collaborate to generate funding? Because it's quite obvious that if big funders can afford to not fund us, they probably won't. And there are big problems elsewhere in the world. Yeah, so number 2 is just my nostalgia point. When I was young, in the 90s, inuutusan ako pumunta sa bakery ng alas 5 ng umaga para bumili ng tinapay at saka ng dyaryo. And so, there was no question about whether I was paying for journalism or not. You're going, bibili ka ng dyaryo. It wasn't accessible if you didn't pay for it except on TV. But you know that on TV, you are paying for what? You pay for it by watching ads. But now people expect journalism to be free. That's the challenge that we need to be thinking about. It's a public good. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why journalists do the work that they do, because they have a strong commitment to public good. And yet, this is a public good that is not paid for by the public here. Right? So how are we going to convince the public to pay for it? How do we get people to understand the value of good journalism? And for example, I was talking to Jess in prep for this. Is there a way to quantify the cost of a photograph? so that someone can appreciate it. And even if you go beyond just the cost of the camera and the cost of yung pamasahe mo to go to the location, the time that you spent at the location trying to capture the photograph, and so on and so forth, how much is that? And then how much are you going to get paid by your wire? And then how much value are people going to put into that photograph so that the wire sees it as a net positive that was worth investing in? Right? So ang daming steps of the value chain. And part of it is that we're not connecting strongly enough to the consumers. We're not convincing them to pay. I mean, di ba, most of us naman willingly pay some level of like, probably most of you who didn't have Disney got Disney on the 75% off thing this month, right? It's a net positive. You feel like it's worth your money, ganon. But I put here the locksmith's dilemma, and if you're not familiar with it, basically this idea that yung locksmith that who is super skilled shows up, goes to the lock, fidgets with it for a few seconds, and then it's open, and then charges the person, 1,000 pesos. And then the person says, "Ba't kita babayaran ng ganyan kamahal? Eh, saglit ka na naman trabaho." Right? Ganyan ka lang eh. Parang madali lang naman yung ginawa mo. But the point here being that to get that good at what he was doing, he has to have been a locksmith for a very long time. He's accrued skills that obviously most of us don't have. And so that's the thing with good journalism. Also with good journalism, well-written, well-shot journal, it looks effortless. It's just like, wow, parang magic lang to nangyari. Which means that that person spent so much time on their craft that it looks like it was easy to do. And so that's the paradox, no? When it looks easy to do, people think that it's easy and therefore they think it's worth less. And so how are we able to communicate the value of the work that we do to people? Especially in a world that's consistently attempting to devalue journalism. So that's our next. Mainstream and even new media struggle with trust against influencers. So this fact that a lot of influencers hold more trust than news organizations. We've seen the studies about, the conflicting value or conflicting trust ratings that news organizations have. And often for us, right, the news organizations that actually have fact checkers and infrastructures behind them are the ones that are being consistently attacked, or they're the ones that can be easily attacked by politicians kasi sila yung may malino na structures. But those are also expensive. So the avenues to connect with audiences are challenged. So basically, what I was saying earlier about social media. So social media limits our ability to access. I don't know if you guys have ever tried to use paid Facebook, but the moment that you pay for a Facebook ad, all your Facebook ads will be more expensive moving forward, and then it becomes more difficult to target. And then there's a threshold where, because they need to keep serving your ad, given the amount of money that you're willing to give, they'll start serving it to irrelevant audiences at certain points. I'm speaking about Facebook because that's what I've used it a lot, but this is how it goes for all these other platforms. So our ability to engage is limited. And then the fact that, for example, there was a point where if you put a link on your post, linking out downranks the thing. So sure, you pay so that it gets fed as a sponsored post, but because it links out. So you have multiple challenges with the way that most people engage, which is on social. So the question becomes, what platforms or what avenues can we have there? And so, personality-driven information ecosystems plus political attacks and conspiracy theories have worked to undermine trust in journalism. So again, thoughts, how can we build trust in traditional institutions? And the thing is, parang galit na galit ang mga tao sa mainstream media, but let's be honest, it's a hard thing to run a mainstream media organization, right? The infrastructures in place actually ensure for better news production for mainstream media, ideally. But they'll have their own flaws, but there is something there that is of value, and we're probably losing that value already. Alam naman natin, di ba? Pag nasara mga network, ganun. How can media start? So, question 2, how can media startups and smaller media organizations, community media, build trustworthy brands? So that's the question for starting out. Especially because if you position yourselves now, saan tayo lulugar? Are you a journalist? Are you an influencer? Are you an influencer journalist? Journalist influencer? Are you an influencer who's working with a news organization? Like, what are the formulations? And I'm throwing out all of these things because it's not that you have to be one thing or the other, but maybe we need to figure out what those formulations are. What I've learned is that one reason why people trust podcasters over news, and this is a very dumb reason, but it's because podcasters give their opinions, and news people, right, journalists are trained to not give their opinions and to not be part of the story, right? But there's a certain authenticity there. And so it shows that people value authenticity. How can we maintain authenticity and integrity while still sharing our opinions and practicing good journalism? Yun yung mga questions that come into play. And then with smaller media, there's an opportunity to start from nothing. Diba? So whereas old media needs to rebuild trust in itself, if you're starting out and you start a YouTube channel or a podcast or a Substack or whatever formulation that might be, how do you build trust there? What are your pieces of integrity that you can start moving from? And then the last one here is what standards can we establish? So I heard Ngana, there's basically some standards that we can check for technical standards for visual journalism to ensure the authenticity of the work. And that is something that is crucial for people in the field. But those kinds of standards are unimportant to your typical user. Again, yung earlier examples natin of Bato, just kind of caring about what's there. So while we will need to have a set of professional standards for ourselves, what are the standards that we can put forward and offer to audiences to say, this is why you go to us and not to influencers? Or for influencers also, this is why you go to me and not another influencer that isn't doing the work. I just remember one story from one of my reporters when I was still a news editor, and she said that she was on the campaign trail, basically covering the Marcos presidential campaign. Tapos kasama niya yung mga Marcos vlogger, and she was writing her story, and then the vlogger came. Tapos naka-upload na yung vlog. The vlogger's like, ano na, tara na, kain na tayo, ganyan. And my reporter said, no, kasi kakasubmit ko lang. O, nasubmit mo na pala. Well, my editor's going to edit, and then I'm gonna have to revise, and then I'm gonna give it back, and then there might be another round of revision before we can put this out. And then the vlogger's like, meron palang ganun. Diba? So wala silang understanding of the process. Right? And so beyond those, that also goes back to that earlier point of they don't see it, and so maybe because we're so invisible, we are so undervalued, but our capacity to show the work might be very important moving forward. Kaya I'm a fan of newsroom podcasts that just have the editors talking about what story they're gonna do, and why that story is the important story for the week. So maybe that's it. Yung parang, if you think about it that way, that's like news writing as Jackson Pollock, diba? You guys are familiar with Jackson Pollock's paintings where it's the splashes, but actually he's painted something, and what you get is the canvas that he was standing on while he was painting. So, that has value, obviously, for art, but what does that look like for journalists if we are able to show our drafts, or our conversations, our discussions, or our planning, or things like that? Parang kasama na. And I know there are certain journalists that are already doing this. They have their TikTok where they show, the process. So how does that look like, and how does that scale towards building trust? Right. Last bit. Ito yung medyo, I know madaldal na, pero mas madaldal dito kasi cognitive space. So, so information or cognitive space. So this is the social media rewards engagement and frequency and speed. People believe what they want to believe. Nabanggit ko na, no? Speed and volume of bad info is only going to increase, and literally nakakapagod sa utak. So before I get to the thoughts, I want to jump to some things. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is response time by stimulus in milliseconds. So, auditory is the fastest response, and this is why kapag nakarinig kayo ng thunder, your body has a automatic stimulus response without thinking. Right? Pag may narinig kayo, gumagalaw kayo, di ba? So, and then the next is visual, and then the last is text. So, bakit? So this is why horror movies work. Di ba? So horror movie, gugulatin ko muna, and then something jumps out. Right? And then, okay, pusa lang pala, ganun. As opposed to if you're reading, never ka naman nagulat habang nagbabasa ka, di ba? Because it takes a certain level of cognitive processing time. But what happens here, particularly when we're looking at the videos that we've shown, right, is we have this, so system 1, system 2 thinking. So in system 1 thinking is basically our reptile brain. So fast, automatic, intuitive, effortless. And system 2 is the slow, deliberate, analytical, ganyan. And so what you'll notice with a lot of the propaganda that were thrown, and specifically, you saw how fast those AI-generated things are, both in, you know, like yung NBA ad na parang yung sobrang bilis. Diba? And then the speed of production and their ability to target. And the thing with stuff like this is emotional. So it's targeting your system 1 thinking so that you stay in system 1. Kaya siya mabilis. So that you don't ever transition to system 2. System 2 yung, wait, hold on, is this real? Should I be believing this? Right? But if the stream is fast enough, tuloy-tuloy lang, deactivated yung system mo, constantly system 1 thinking. And when I said nakakapagod ng internet, di ba basically puro system 1 thinking ang internet? Think of the speed of TikTok videos and stuff like that. Sobrang system 1 lang lahat. Unless, you know, yung mga 3-minute creator or whatever. But then if you're doing that, you might as well be watching YouTube. So, again, these platforms specialize in boosting this kind of approach. And so, one, parang disheartening kasi, my God, ganyan. But also, heartening because if we figure out how to focus and use audio and visual together, which is basically, if we figure out how to make engaging video, kasi di ba, parang ang nangyayari usually, if you're with a news organization, it's always the news package. Di ba? Tapos yung itsura ng news package always has a kind of format that people deactivate from because it is not going system 1. But what happens if we start to imagine news packages as system 1 that transitions to system 2? Right? That may be an opportunity for us there. Next, and adding to cognitive, no, also shout out ChatGPT, lahat ng infographics ko today. So all of those were made within seconds while I was thinking. So with minor revision. So this is basically human conscious processing capacity. So how many bits per second can our brain process? And I put this because how many times have you been talking to somebody who's on their phone? Diba? And they're just like, huh? Ano nga ulit? Diba? Because you can't like, this is what the standard brain is. Like, unless you have a super powerful brain that does double, right? And even then, diba? Parang multitasking to a certain level. You can't do 2 conversations. So when I say you can't do 2 conversations, imagine how much engagement is necessary to have a meaningful conversation with someone. Now imagine, how are you going to have a meaningful conversation with anyone on the internet when it's literally limited to X number of words and your video is capped at X number of ganyan? So and so it goes back to the nakakapagod sa utak because how many conversations are we shifting from? If you think about your brain as RAM, I don't know, if you're younger, baka okay ka pa. But the older you get, yung parang when you switch from one thing to the next, asan nga ba yung telepono ko? And then you were talking to someone, and then you know that you were gonna do something, so you open a browser window, and you're like, what was I gonna look for again? So basically, your brain is maxing out of RAM and processing power on the day-to-day because of all of these inputs. And if we're constantly taking, you know, system 1 stimulus over and over, what is that doing to our ability to process? And I'm saying all of this stuff because it is really important when you look down the barrel of the ability of AI to generate all of this stuff. If you saw like Lionsgate just announced, Lionsgate is a film company that makes John Wick. And they said, using AI, you will have a child-friendly version of John Wick. Why? Right? Like that. Why would you want to generate that? But that's what the world is going to look like. It's going to take things, it's just going to make versions that are for this kind of person or for that kind of person, which maybe sounds great if you're a film company, but what does that look like for an information ecosystem where everyone gets to just design the things that they want or sets parameters on those things that they will receive? Imagine, and I will inevitably turn to art here. Like when you deal with art, you're often forced to confront ideas, emotions, stuff that you normally on the day-to-day would not. Diba? Some of the best films that we've ever seen are ones that we will never watch again because they're too like, oh my God, that probably deserves an Oscar, but I'm never watching that again. Kasi hindi siya comfort eh. So this sense that we are being inundated, constantly under attack. Sige, next slide, please. So our brains are constantly under attack. This is what we're dealing with on the day-to-day. And it's going to get even easier. And this is for us, right? Some people, they flip open their phone and they're like, I just want to have fun, I just want to relax. Wala na. Diba? This is how you kind of create a malleable populace. So question is, how do we build alternative spaces for discourse and engagement? Big question for me here. Like, is it time for us to start driving people offline? I think I've been talking to a lot of musicians, and they're turning to vinyl, their CDs again, their tapes again. Live performance is much more meaningful now, and the question is, what does that look like for a lot of us? Will the magazine become viable because people are so tired of this stuff again? Will quarterlies become viable? What is it going to look like if we come up with some other way? And alternative spaces like this, where we can have these kinds of conversations. Diba? Kasi I know that there are people watching on Zoom, and thanks, and it makes it accessible, but also, like, I'm kind of tired of Zoom. Like, if I can have a face-to-face and a roundtable discussion and a conversation and a conference and things like that, I want to do it in person now because I'm tired of being online. That's just me, but again, changing the way that we're interacting with the world. Next is, how do we strengthen media literacy long-term? And I say media literacy, embedded within that is AI literacy, social media literacy, all of this stuff, which also is precluded by basically education. We're in such a challenging space for education, and we as journalists need to find ways to partner with educational institutions to figure it out. Is journalism and journalistic values, can we embed those in early grade school? Can we make sure that every school has a journalism club? Can we do all of these things, and can we find ways to support? And I don't know if there's a revenue model for that, but there has to be some way where journalists are partnering with educational institutions, so that one, we're providing them with education, but we're also training generations of people not just to be journalists, but to appreciate journalism. It's sort of like, for a lot of things, like, maraming stand-up comedy workshop at maraming improv workshop, ganon. And it's like, not all of those people are going to be stand-ups or improv people, but you're continuing to build a community, because by helping them to learn the craft, you are instilling in them an appreciation for that craft, and then they'll go and they'll watch and they'll be part of this community and they'll engage. So what might that look like for us? I keep looking at mga adjacents and parallels because some spaces have figured it out. And there's not going to be a specific right path for us, but we're going to have to test as many paths as possible. And then this last one is, how do we instill a respect for and aspiring to truth and integrity? Yan talaga. That's the big problem, because yan, gusto ko, like there's, sunugin mo ako, amoy blank pa rin ako. Parang, di ba? Like, what the hell? Dude, that just sounds disgusting though, also, right? But di ba, parang truth, integrity, what are we after here? And if we, at some point, because I was saying, I was talking to international journalists, and they were saying, well, what would you change? Ganyan. So, you know what? If we had, these leaders just need to be different. And he said, I think that's on your people. Medyo harsh. I think that's on your population now. Like those leaders that you have, that's your people. So you need to fix your people. Like, yeah, sasabihin mo dun, fair. Ganun, fair. Maybe we need to fix that. So where does that come in? And again, media literacy is not enough. Even if people become literate in media, kung yung media na napoproduce at yung information ecosystem natin is so compromised, then wala rin. Okay, so I'm getting towards the end. Sorry. So our taglines in AI and in data and AI ethics is AI problems are human problems, and AI solutions should solve human problems, right? And that's the thing. It's like, AI is going to come in and it's going to fix everything, and it's not. And we're going to have to identify what the problems are, and we're going to have to solve them with the tools at hand. And AI is a tool that can be wielded by anyone. And the question has to be, are we going to pick it up? And when we pick it up, how are we going to use it? I referenced those earlier failure points because those earlier failure points are what is talked about. What's not talked about as often is si Matthew. Matthew and I were part of a AI in journalism competition. Of 12 organizations, 2 were Filipino, 12 global, 2 were Filipino, 2 finalists. Kami. No one talks about that in AI. Diba? But we talk about the failures. Right? But they built great things, we built great things, but that is not the story. Okay, next, please. So I just have 3 top line ideas. So AI slop versus AI-powered tasks. So when people imagine, okay, gawa na AI yan. Diba? This dumb thing going around. If there's an M dash, that's ChatGPT. Parang ng conspiracy theory, di ba? And you'll fix it at some point. Like, you're not some magical sage because you figured out the M dash. Congratulations to you, but also, I write fiction. I love the M dash. But the idea that instead of editors, publishers pushing journalists to write AI slop, to generate AI slop, what does the AI-powered workflow look like? Right? So the integrity of the work of the visual journalist should be protected. Like, you do what you are doing. But what are the things that you could offload? Don't know about you guys, lalo yung mga professionals dito, don't you hate budget stuff? Like, God, yung mga resibo and yung mga, imagine if your company just built a, computer vision AI, and then you just send them a picture of the receipt, and then that AI just loads off everything, and then nandun na yung budget report mo for your trip. Tapos, hindi mo na kailangan i-type, hindi mo kailangan ilagay yung tin nung kung ano-ano. Like, these are within reach solutions using simple AI. Alright? It's not generative. Huwag ka mag-generative so for your budget, no? Baka sumabit ka dun. So, it's understanding AI systems, what they can be used for, how they can make your tasks easier so that you can do what you need to do. As a person who runs teams, who runs organizations, medyo magic sa akin yung AI note taker. Kasi after, imagine if you had to have the minutes of the meeting, tapos yung who is tasked with what are the next steps, and then imagine holding people accountable, lalo na yung meron kang teammate na, wala naman akong sinabing ganun. And then you pull out your AI transcript and you, eto, sa'yo to, ganun. So, di ba, it's a really good way to pull things over. Ako, as a writer, very simple use. I used AI transcription to transcribe a bunch of interviews. I dropped those into my AI, and then I said, this is the outline of what I'm writing. Pull out the relevant quotes for me from each interviewee. And then I review, and then I make sure na nandun nga yung sinabi niya. Right? But it makes it faster. So it's about speed and then creativity, mixing, understanding, rather than offloading the work. Right? You offload the task. Kasi that's what I would ask an assistant to do anyway. Hanapin mo yung magandang quote. Right, next. So AI slop versus AI innovative usage. So, yun nga, there's again, we're gonna have to be fighting against AI slop, and that's all of the videos. That's all that everybody's complaining about. If you go on LinkedIn, it's like, I can't stop reading all of this AI slop. Why are you still on LinkedIn? Diba? But the idea is that a lot of this is going to be AI generated. So how can we move beyond slop to find innovative usage? Specifically for visual journalism, I wound up thinking a lot about infographics and the capability for data to communicate things. So the next slide is going to just be some silly things I got from an infographics book that I have about superheroes. So that's how to read a comic book, no, the Z, right? And then this is a matrix of good and evil for superhero characters, and you can find out how libertarian or authoritarian your favorite superhero is. But the point here being that there are ways that we can present information that are much more striking. And next slide, please. So this is about a year old. Kasi nag-switch na yung number 2. Number 1 na ngayon yung therapy and companionship. But most of this still holds, right? So this is how people are using generative AI in 2024. There's a more updated version, hindi ko na pull, but it's from Anthropic. So if you go to Anthropic's website, they'll have a study on what AI is most used for, and then who uses AI the most. And then the last one, this is me being dumb with infographics, but again, this is Chat GPT generated infographic, which is, I wanted to see how much, so you know how they say, we lose, X million pesos per day in traffic. And I said, okay, project it out, because I can't do math now. Project it out for a year, and then compare it to the annual budgets of these institutions. And so if you put that out, like, oh my God, really? Like, that's how much we lose in traffic? That's a really big problem, because ganyan. And so finding ways to present this stuff. Also, I would never publish this. No, I'm presenting this to you guys to show how easy it is. But it is not a nice looking graphic, right? It's not great, but it's something that if I'm working in a newsroom, I can take this graphic and I go, ganito yung peg natin, pero you do your, your visual magic on this stuff. Because I can't draw, I can't do these things, right? I'm primarily a writer, but as a writer, this gives me a tool to better interface with my, with my designers, with my artists, with my data scientists, and so on and so forth. So last slide na tayo. So it's just coming back to AI slop versus authentic space. So this idea that if everyone is overloaded with AI slop, maybe we quit. That's my dream scenario. Sobrang inis na tayo sa social media feed natin because it's filled with Mark Zuckerberg creating fake friends for us. And we're like, you know what, I'm done with this, right? Because that's the current meta AI move, is to create friends. Because there's a loneliness epidemic, so he'll just make us bots. But maybe we turn away from this stuff and we create more authentic spaces. And could AI be used to help research who is in our sphere, how we can find, how we can organize? So this, maybe AI is the way, maybe it's not the way, but it is going to have to be a tool in our toolkit as we explore, what we need to transform into moving forward. Ayan, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carl Joe. That's been very informative, kind of heavy, but really, really informative. So I'm just gonna try to summarize some of the points that Carl Joe said. Ito yung mga na-pick up ko, that really interest me. Like for one, when digital came, suddenly we have a democratization of information and communication. So dati, like for example, konti lang, ang gumagawa lang ng journalism dati are journalists, newspapers, TVs. But now, when digital came, no, it suddenly it exploded. Lahat na ngayon with a camera, with a laptop or with tablets can now become citizen journalists or participate in the, you know, in communication exercises and spreading of news. Okay. And then next is the question of ano no, when digital came, nag-arise yung question ng relevancy ng media. No? So, since lahat naman gumagawa na di ba? Nasa social media ng lahat no? So, ano pang, kailangan pa ba natin ng mainstream media? No? So, isang malaking question that until now, we're still trying to address and still trying to find the answer. No? And then it all boils down to what Carl just said. No? It's a matter of trust. No? How can we bring back or how can we sustain the public's trust no, in the media? Anong relation niya sa AI? Well, sinagot din ni Sir Carl John. No? So yung marami nang gumagamit ng AI o maraming audience ng AI because it's visual, it's fast, it's funny, we can relate to it. But at the same time, no, there's a need for us in the journalism industry to teach the public, to share media literacy to the public, no? Para maintindihan nila ano yung difference between AI, user-generated, and authentic news. And then we went back to funding, and then he went to funding. Again, this is a big question no, for the journalism industry today, no? How since many newspapers and many news organizations are shutting down, no? Kasi nga readily available na sa social media yung ng contents and news and like what Carl just said, sobrang bilis ng pagkalat ng news, no? I-post mo lang sa Twitter and then after a few seconds, pwedeng thousands, hundreds of thousands and millions na kagad yung mari-reach ng information, ano. So, balik tayo doon sa relevancy, no? And then we went to the question of, is AI evil? Well, I have a similar lecture series that we've been doing this all over the Philippines, with another organization. We're trying to do media literacy with among students all over the Philippines, Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, and we pag tinatakal namin yung the use of technology, is it really evil? No, ang sagot palagi is no, it is not. No, it is technology is not, it's not the culprit. It's always. Alam nyo ba na ang faking ng pictures and videos has been here and it's already been existing even before AI and digital. No? So, ibig sabihin, hindi yung technology yung problema natin. Ang problema natin are the people behind it, people behind fake news and misinformation, no? Those who are spreading it. No? Anyway, so, can we use AI in journalism? Of course. Ginagamit natin siya. No? Pero at the same time, meron siyang limit. Especially sa aming mga journalists, meron tayong sinusunod na ethical standards. No? So, in our journalism world, the use of AI has its limits. No? And the best person who can, explain the nuances and rudiments of these limits is our next speaker for today, si Mr. Jake Soriano. Let's welcome Sir Jake.
Thanks, Jess. Good morning, everyone. First of all, thanks very much to FOCAP for inviting me here today to speak on AI and visual journalism, and congratulations for this second year of the Romeo Gacad lectures in honor of the late and legendary AFP photographer. I've never worked with him at AFP, unfortunately for me. When I joined in the Manila Bureau in 2019, late 2019, he was already in Bangkok, I believe, at that time. But everyone I've spoken with who had known him and had worked with him, I was kind of expecting everyone to say, yeah, he's a brilliant photographer. He was like this when he got nominated for those 2 Pulitzers. But they were all very they all praised how great he was as a person, how he's a great colleague and an excellent person to work with. So it's an honor to be speaking today in this event. I will skip my introduction, Jess already did that. Just to quickly note, I would not call myself a visual journalist at AFP, but the core of what I do intersects with lots of visuals. So I help manage a team of digital verification journalists at the agency, and what we do is report on and debunk misinformation. So that's I encounter videos, images, usually misrepresented, but increasingly also generated using artificial intelligence technologies. I am also involved quite a bit in investigating UGC, user-generated content that we use in our coverage that we publish on the AFP Newswire, and I will be talking about that in a bit. I also would like to have some brief introduction to AFP as well. It's one of the world's leading news agencies with its mission to provide rapid, comprehensive, impartial, and verified coverage of the news and issues that shape our daily lives. Therefore, we say the agency benefits from 4 major assets. So the first would be the size of its network and our presence in many locations across the world. In some of these locations are rarely covered, which our network allows us to diversify our sources beyond the institutional ones. And one of our hallmarks, the hallmarks of AFP journalism is the attention the agency pays to human interest stories. Second is our high-quality multimedia production. Images are now increasingly a key element of our news coverage, and it accounts for half of the agency's turnover. And live video broadcasts, we have around 60 a day. They're among the most popular products. The agency is also governed by a statute that guarantees its total independence. It does not have shareholders, so as to protect it from external influences, and its decision-making body is a 13-member board of directors. It's oversight body that can be consulted on issues that may be seen as affecting the agency's independence. Finally, fourth, and this relates to what I do at the agency, is its AFP's leadership in the role in the fight against misinformation and disinformation. So just some figures on our global reach. The AFP has around 2,600 staff. 1,700 are journalists from 100 nationalities, working in 150 countries to 60 plus locations, and we provide 24/7 news coverage globally. Hong Kong, where I'm based in, is our headquarters for the Asia Pacific region. Other HQs are in Paris, Washington, D.C., and Montevideo for Latin America. So I've already mentioned this earlier, but we have the world's largest network of digital investigation journalists, myself included. We specialize in fact checking and digital verification. Basically, we expose this information to establish the truth. We publish our reports on a dedicated fact check blog, fact check website. And we also offer journalists from all over the world free access to digital investigation training. We are a member of the European Fact Checking Standards Network, the EFCSN. I also have a hard time with that acronym. And the International Fact Checking Network, the IFCN, which means to adhere to Code of Principles of Non-Partisanship and Fairness, transparency of sources, methodology of funding, and an honest corrections policy. All the sources that we use in our stories and our fact checks are linked to in the reports that we publish. So everything that we use, everything that we cite is properly linked for transparency. The corrections bit, we do that. We have a very rigorous fact checking and editing process, but when errors happen, we correct them immediately, and we have a page listing all of the corrections made for transparency. Transparency of sources as well. All our funders are indicated in a page in the fact check website. In Asia Pacific, we fact check misinformation in 18 countries, and we publish in 8 different languages. Tagalog is not one of them. For our Philippines reports, we publish in English. The languages we work in Asia Pacific are there's English, Indonesian, Malaysian, Thai, Burmese, Korean, Bengali, and Hindi. And we have local language editors working on these languages. And the reporters are also fluent in or native language speakers, basically. So their expertise of the local context greatly informs our reporting. And these are just screenshots of the various versions of our fact check blog. I think the first one is English. Then that should be Hindi, Korean, Indonesian, and Thai. AFP also works with platforms to combat online misinformation. So we are among more than a dozen fact check organizations paid by TikTok to verify videos that potentially contain false information. We are part of Meta's third-party fact-checking program alongside nearly 100 media organizations globally verified by the IFCN. This was in the news earlier when Meta announced it would be ending its fact-checking program in the US. So that development was shocking and worrying. The agency maintains its commitment to combating misinformation, and outside the US, we continue its work as usual, business as usual for us. And even in the US, we continue to write about misinformation on the fact check website, on the AFP fact check website. The picture on the left, can I do my, no, they show fact check warnings on Facebook and Instagram. So once fact checkers rate these posts, these overlays would show, and it warns users that something they've shared are false or misleading or omit important context, which make them misleading. Available data released by Facebook would tell us this creates a form of friction in sharing misinformation. It has prevented users from sharing misinformation. That data is quite old, but it's nice to know that Meta has its separate enforcement policies, such as downgrading the visibility of posts or removing monetization for repeat offenders. The one thing to clarify would be we don't. That's what Meta does. What we do in the third-party fact check program is fact check these these posts. Oh, there you go. The second one is TikTok has a different sort of model for handling misinformation. Um, Sometimes one sees these warnings for posts that are flagged to be false or misleading. Other times, TikTok takes down posts or appears to take down posts. So the digital verification team, my team at AFP, we are misinformation specialists basically, but we also help with verifying, as I mentioned earlier, verifying user-generated content, UGC. So one of the key things that happened with the rise of social media, of course, increasingly everyone has mobile phones with very great cameras, right? So a lot of people who are witnesses to breaking news events, they're there, they're at the site of events, and they are able to capture visuals of the events. And these user-generated content, they are helpful, and they if they're authentic, they help a lot in improving our coverage, right? They provide stunning visuals of events. Um, uh, so at AFP, our reporters, well, our reporters can't be everywhere, can't predict where some disaster happens, but social media users can be there. So that's one of the things that we do is verify these visuals for authenticity before the agency distributes these to clients. And these are a couple of examples for UGC that we verified. The first one, this is a screenshot from a video actually that was taken in Tibet early this year following that major earthquake in that remote part of China. So we were able to, immediately after the earthquake, a lot of images spread on Chinese social media. The challenge is to sift through those and find out which ones are genuine and really taken and show the aftermath of the earthquake. And this was one of the visuals that we have determined were actually from the disaster. We know it's genuine because one of our Chinese language fact checkers was able to verify the location by comparing it on street imagery on Baidu. Everyone should be familiar with street imagery, right? A lot of mapping platforms. Google is the most prominent. Like Google is a very important and very nice tool for fact checking. So when you go on a certain map, you're able to have an interactive view of whatever location you want. It's not for every location in the world, but like if you go outside, if you pin Mall of Asia on Google Maps and you click Street View, you're able to see an interactive view of that. And that's very useful for fact checking because we're able to compare what you see over here with what's in the mapping platform. And this matches, right? I think we saw the same sign, this same street. So that would confirm the location. And it's hard to, it's impossible to fake that, right? So we know this is a genuine, I think, footage and image taken during, it shows the aftermath of the earthquake. Another example would be this one, verified by our fact checker in Manila. It's a stunning clip. Well, it's dashcam footage of. Do you remember that plane collision in Washington D.C. a few months ago? So the car camera happened to be on, and it was able to capture the exact moment those two aircraft collided. I'm not able to. I wasn't able to find public links to this now. I think because the license expired. But this thing over here would be those aircraft colliding. And it was just accidentally captured because the dash cam was on. And our fact checker in Manila was able to confirm this to be authentic by talking to the owner of the clip and by comparing it, by cross-checking it with other visuals that show the same location. So again, location is important in our work in verifying UGC. So it's important, right? We see these circulating online after breaking news events, and once we're able to verify it, they help in our coverage. This is another one. If you could play I'll play it. It's a very brief clip. Another UGC that we've verified. It shows a Starlink. I think the second Starlink spacecraft that crashed. This was, I think, around May this year as well. This one was taken by someone in the Turks and Caicos Islands, in somewhere in Turks and Caicos in the Caribbean. We confirmed this was genuine by first, the location is correct. The guy, we were able to speak to the person who filmed this and said, yeah, I filmed that in a certain restaurant in Turks and Caicos, and that matches with what's available on Google Maps. The other thing is, his Twitter profile says he's a Canadian retiree, and just before this clip was posted, he had a history of sharing posts from Turks and Caicos. So that's quite impossible to fake, right? If someone is in a location and filmed a clip from that location several days after, yeah, you can't go back to the past and log in on that location. So that's how we were able to confirm this is authentic. Other things that we do, we ask for the actual file itself and inspect the metadata. Social media sites, they delete the metadata of these images, and but we're able to check if they have the original. There. Um, so that's UGC, right? But the flip side is crisis events more often than not, they spark a lot of misinformation, a lot of misrepresented images and visuals, and this has been going on with, again, that's an effect of people having mobile phones out, but also people having social media sites, right? So and this was on full display during the recent India-Pakistan crisis. It's 4 days of intense military conflict, just 4 days, but up to today, we're still seeing false, misleading posts related to this one. Even with the fighting ended basically with unexpectedly ended with a ceasefire. But at that time, everyone was like fearing it could lead to full-scale war, which is very scary. These are nuclear armed neighbors. They're arch rivals. And during this entire episode, it didn't begin there. It began like several weeks before with an attack in Indian administered Kashmir that targeted tourists, mostly Hindus. India blames that attack on Pakistan. Pakistan is denying it supported the attack, but it began there. And during the entire episode, we have fact checked over 100 different pieces of misinformation in I think 4 or 5 different languages in Asia Pacific. So these are the most notable examples. The first one is very it's quite prominent. So it's an explosion. When that morning when India started launching its assault on sites that it says it says these are terror sites in Pakistan. This video was released by Pakistan's military and eventually got published by several media as well. It's not from the India-Pakistan crisis. It's from Gaza. But yeah, because of everything was so fast. So and it was released by a military source. It was technically a handout, but it was falsely represented. So it's not from there, and we ended up writing a debunk about it. The second example here is a mosque that was burning. So this got very popular in India among Indian social media users because this is Pakistan's national mosque in the capital, Islamabad. So they said the mosque was targeted by a drone strike. I think the first day of the conflict or the second day. And it shows the fire that happened in the vicinity of the mosque. But this clip is old. It's from it's from a year before the crisis, so it couldn't have been a drone attack at that time, right? Because the clip is old. But we did one thing further with our verification. So our journalist working for our Islamabad bureau actually visited the mosque. It's very close to where our bureau is and found no signs of any drone damage. So this is clearly false information. This third one is it's a nasty piece of misinformation. So I mentioned earlier the entire crisis was triggered by this attack on civilians in Indian administered Kashmir, and immediately after that assault, posts in India shared this clip. They said shows a soldier and his new wife, no, a young couple, not new wife, a young couple, their final moments in this tourist town in Kashmir. These two people, they're both alive. Our Delhi reporter was able to talk to them and confirm they were not in Kashmir. The clip was filmed a few days before the attack. But yeah, you see how misinformation and falsely shared visuals how they impact even ordinary people. Um, Yep. So a lot of the misinformation that we see are really just falsely shared visuals. Like that still forms a huge chunk of what we work with at digital verification. But with the extending the example of the India-Pakistan crisis, the use of AI has increased basically. So some of the visuals that we've seen and debunked use AI to depict events that simply never happened. So this was very popular in India among Indian social media users, saying Donald Trump. I'll play the video in the next slide. Yeah, they claim Trump sided with India and said he has threatened Pakistan. If they don't back down, he will erase Pakistan. The other clip is from a military spokesman supposedly announcing that Islamabad lost 3 fighter jets. He never said such thing. I'll play the Trump video now. See how.
I don't want war, I want peace. But if Pakistan attacks India, I will support India, erase Pakistan, and warn China. I love Indian people.
Yep, it's a very brief clip, and Trump is very popular. His speaking style is quite distinct, so it's very easy to manipulate that. And AI is very good at cloning voices now. The thing is, he never really said that. Eventually, he played a role in the season. Trump who announced the ceasefire, right? But he never said he will erase Pakistan. And we know this is fake because, first of all, there's no actual record of him saying he will erase Pakistan or he will say Pakistan should back down. But also because we have this genuine clip and it's like 40 minutes long. And this was filmed during his campaign in 2018, during his first presidential run. And nowhere in this clip, of course, he could not have said it because there was no India-Pakistan crisis in 2016. But also, we watched the entire thing and he was talking about a lot of things, Hillary, the US economy, nothing India-Pakistan. So this was altered. It's a very cheap form of, well, people call it cheap fake, but like as Carl mentioned earlier, if you watch it on your phone, if you're very emotional, if you're in there, it's fairly easy to fall into these types of misinformation. Another one using AI during that crisis, there was this Pakistan has maintained it shot down 5 Indian fighter jets. India has denied that. This spread surprisingly in Indonesia. I think so. It says it's evidence that there were fighter jets that were shot down, and this is a truck carrying debris of those downed jets. It's generated using AI. We know AI because the things here are gibberish, so it doesn't correspond to any license plate used in Pakistan, and it has the digital Google watermark. So these are some of the things that we've seen during the recent crisis. I would expand and cite more examples of AI generated visuals from across the region. I think I have an example from the Philippines here. This is from Pakistan. Pakistan is socially conservative, right? So this was a this is a very viral clip. The woman is a local politician in Balochistan in Pakistan. She was targeted with this video. Basically, it shows her hugging a male, another local politician in her region, and this is frowned upon. Such displays of affection are frowned upon in Pakistan and in a country where there's already issues with women participating in public life. This exposes her to not just harassment, but it endangers her life, right? So it's AI generated. We know AI because it was generated from a still image. So this was the original that we found. It's a different politician. There was no hug. And increasingly, there are lots of examples of this type of AI generated misinformation targeting women specifically. And in Pakistan, I think we have a couple more examples, and we reported about this for the AFP Wire. This next one is from the Philippines. Super viral. And this spread almost immediately after there were local reports that of increasing number of young children being pregnant. I think in General Santos, there was a local report from there. And almost immediately, Post started sharing this picture of they say this is the youngest child who got pregnant. You would think people always say, they're using this as when they're called out for spreading misinformation, they would say, this is just a representation. It's not what's being represented is true, but in this case, it's still quite harmful. I would say, even because this is well, I think users got the wrong message here, and they said, yeah, parents don't take care of their children. But I think our reporters, when they talked to local sources, they said, yeah, that's not the lesson here, right? The lesson is, I think the youngest person who got pregnant was in fact abused, right? And I think this eventually led to like the dark, or I'm not sure if it was from the the dark portions of the internet, people who are interested in children. So it's quite scary, but we were able to debunk, and we know it's not genuine because there are some inconsistencies in here, right? The shoes, they suddenly change. This box over here is not the same box anymore. So the mall actually changes features, right? You see lights over here, and then it changes. So yeah, that's one example from we have from the Philippines. And this one is from South Korea. They just had their presidential elections after a very turbulent couple of months, not couple of months, several months. This is actually South Korea's new president, Lee Jae-myung. He notably lost the previous presidential election to Yoon Suk-yeol, the president who declared martial law in December. Before that, he is known for staging a hunger strike to protest against the ruling government at that time. And a lot of his critics, they've always said that the hunger strike was staged. It wasn't real, even if he was in a hospital. So this is the AI generated clip. It's a video um, appearing to show him celebrating after the cameras were turned off in a hospital. And this is very popular in South Korea, especially among his critics. But it's from this still showing him in a hospital. The features of the hospital, they change, so inauthentic. I think this is my final example, and this one, a lot of a lot of media organizations worldwide published this video as genuine. So it's a weird. Well, it's an accident that happened in somewhere in northern China. There's this paraglider, a paraglider who was practicing and got swept away by very heavy winds, up to, I think they said around 8,000 kilometers up in the air. That story is genuine, and it generated lots of interest. Of course, everyone was quite interested in the story, and so Chinese media published this footage. It's composed of several clips, which they say it was taken from his GoPro. Because it was published by local media, it got shared, and eventually a lot of other media organizations republished the clip without checking. Turns out there are visible signs of AI over here. In the first clip, you see he has a white helmet on. It turns black in the next few clips. The equipment changes as well. It starts with the man with just his feet, but then suddenly he's in this like cocoon-like thing. And nobody, I don't think, saw that when they published the footage, right? Eventually, it was killed, taken down when these things surfaced. And there's that AI, Chinese language AI watermark over here. It's not sad. Well, the thing that we know from our work at digital verification is there is no single tool that we can use to spot AI. All these, it's really a or a combination of steps to know when something is AI generated. This is tricky because with genuine clips, it's very easy to know if they're old by just reverse image searching them. So if a certain picture or a video has been shared 5 days before an event has happened, then we know it does not show that event, right? It's quite easy to find that or to know that by doing those simple steps. With AI, it's quite different. Sometimes there is no original because the content is generated from scratch using an AI tool. Yeah, it's fairly common. There are a lot of free tools online that you can use to just generate images or visuals from scratch. Sometimes reverse image searches would lead us to an original post, and we've encountered this quite a lot, where we find the original poster of that AI content, and some people are very transparent with their AI use. They say, I generated this using this so and so tool, or a combination of tools. These were my prompts on ChatGPT. Unfortunately, when that gets reshared, the watermarks get deleted, the transparency disclosures are not shared, and then it gets to a point where everyone starts to believe the images, the visuals are genuine. But sometimes we're quite lucky and we're able to reach out to these users, and they tell us that some people are actually quite generous, and they share their entire process. These were my prompts. These are the tools that I've used. These were my the images that I used to create this entire video. So looking for that original source sometimes helps. It's very crucial as well in helping us track the authenticity of an image. And finally, there are physical or digital watermarks as well. Sometimes, despite AI watermarks, we know from the example mentioned earlier of that kid talking about the impeachment, the AI watermark is there, but it's still circulated as if it were genuine. So looking for these AI watermarks also quite helpful in pinpointing AI. Another example from looking at the location is another method we always do to determine if visuals are AI generated. This supposedly shows a pro-monarchy rally in Thailand, and the posts say this was captured near Chulalongkorn University. But if you look at its street view, there's no such image that matches this. I think there's no building like this. There are other buildings like this in Bangkok probably, or look like this. But in Chulalongkorn, in the park where the rally supposedly happened, there's this vantage point is non-existent. So that also signals it's AI generated. And in AFP, one of the things that we use is the verification plugin. It's a plugin that we can install on Chrome. It was co-developed by AFP and designed as a sort of like a Swiss Army knife, a verification Swiss Army knife, because it has several tools in there within the plugin that we are able to use to inspect several elements in visuals and images. It can quickly get contextual information on videos. It is able to break videos up to keyframes, which we can reverse image search. This also has a feature where when you add images to the tool, it will tell you if that certain video has been fact-checked elsewhere by other fact-checkers. So it has that database. Again, it's only one tool that we can use. It's not like the tool that can 100% tell us something, a visual is AI. And it can be used to detect deepfakes as well. This is just one example. From 2023, there's this widely shared clip from Indonesia of the former president supposedly speaking in Mandarin, but it was created using an old video published by an NGO where he was speaking in English, and a lot of these examples are circulating online. Public officials speaking in languages that they don't really speak in. I think when former President Duterte was arrested and transferred to The Hague, Chinese social media users, for some reason, they seemed very fascinated with this entire saga. So they started sharing clips of Vice President Sara Duterte speaking in perfect Mandarin, and a lot of people seem to believe that that was true. It's not. We found the original video in there. Those were AI generated as well. I don't think I'll show you how InVid, or the verification plugin, works. But at AFP, as mentioned earlier, we have a set of digital verification courses that help. The aim is to really help journalists and journalism students learn more about these digital verification tools, these fact-checking tools that we do. And the latest addition to these courses is a dedicated course on just the verification plugin that I mentioned earlier. It's previously called InVid. So this entire course, in this course, those who take the course would know how to, the basics from installing the plugin to using it to analyze visuals, and improving our searches online as well. And as mentioned, it's part of several different courses which you can access for free on this website. And all of these tools are using a combination of these tools help us in the team tackle AI-generated content. 16 short self-paced modules made for journalists and journalism students. And after, we encourage everyone to take these courses, even journalists who are working in the industry for quite a while. Even myself, I've been doing digital verification for a while now. I've found these courses extremely useful. I think I'm down to my final few points now. The rise in AI, of course, is worrying, and the AI revolution comes at a time where trust in the media is at historic lows in most countries, in many countries across the world. So very polarized. The news environment is very polarized. People don't trust the media that much. So it's a great challenge. And there's this thing called some experts are now talking about the liars. They call it the liars dividend, where increasingly there's that risk of those in power saying something is AI, even if it's genuine. They can always say something. Someone was filmed in committing a crime, for example. So public officials can say that's clearly false. It was AI generated, even if the clip is true. So that's another risk of that we might face with increasing AI use. I think at AFP, what we find is it's increasingly becoming more important to demonstrate how our images are captured. It's part of building trust in the audience, right? Letting everyone know that all of our images are captured by a person using a camera. And this is just a screenshot of a recent report that we did on another challenging aspect of AI. A lot of people are turning to AI now for their source of information. Just earlier this morning, the Reuters Institute for Journalism released their findings that say younger people, like under 35, are increasingly turning to AI for news. Really, it's a challenge, but it's where we're heading at. Yeah, they get their information from ChatGPT, not the regular sources of misinformation. And those that, I think the study also found that those who rely on traditional media are already decreasing. So there's that. And this is, but this just shows you one of the challenges, another challenge in that presented by AI. A lot of people are also turning to AI for fact checks. So this is it's a trend on Twitter now. There's this, they have Grok, right? A lot of people are asking, every time they're not sure about something that's posted on Twitter, they turn to the AI tool for fact checking. Unfortunately, it's been riddled with errors. We found for this report that the tool was not accurate. There's an instance where it was not able to, I think it misrepresented the photo basically. And the other thing, the more newsy one was there were recently reports that it's Grok, right? That it started talking about white genocide on posts that are unrelated. So I think someone was asking the tool about an HBO show, and it started ranting about this supposed conspiracy about white people being mass murdered in South Africa. Yeah, X has since clarified that there was an unauthorized change in the algorithm, and then they said they've fixed it, but it just shows us the danger of AI. But I think everyone will, this is a reality we're living in. People are turning to AI for news and turning to AI for fact-checking. I will show you on that.
AFP is at the heart of the news images ecosystem.
Sorry.
We have built for decades constant flow of images of news from around the world. Arca
just to briefly,
in forms of negatives.
I will just show you a clip. I mentioned in the previous slide that it's increasingly becoming, and there's this increasing need for those who work in the media to, well, as when we work in visuals, to watermark our own images so we can show the public that they're really authentic. And this is one initiative by AFP in collaboration with tech partners and also camera makers. So it's the video will explain it better. It relates to digital watermarking and ensuring and showing the public, the provenance of an image, or the source of an image. So I think this video explains it quite nicely.
Glass plates, unique documents proving the origin of an image. The veracity was the negative. With the apparition of generative AI, our profession is facing a new threat in the trust it has built with its viewers, with its subscribers. So in a world where digital information becomes so easy, tech companies and the media have decided on a standard to certify the provenance of an original image. That standard, called C2PA, we have to build on it. Because that certificate is easily lost on the social networks and the various workflows and images going through. It's our job, and that's what we thought is vital for news companies, to find a way to trace back an image. That trace should be robust and should be permanent. So at AFP, François, Marita, and Antonin Tullier, they came with an idea. So with that concept in mind, that idea, we went to our traditional partners. With Nikon on the side and Imatag on the other, we decided to go for a real-life proof of concept on the US 2024 election.
With a C2PA compatible camera, the photographer takes a picture, adding a secure digital signature to the file as the photo is taken. He transmits his photo to AFP. The original file is stored in a secure location, while a duplicate is sent to AFP photo editors for standard processing. Finally, just before the photo is delivered to AFP clients, the image is tattooed with an individual, encrypted, and invisible watermark. Now, imagine you come across a photo in the media or on social networks that you want to source. With the Chrome extension WeVerify, widely used by fact checkers for years, you can easily decode the watermarking that links to the AFP image and the secured original file, similar to examining a photo's negative.
So what's next? With that proof of concept, the idea was to go beyond theory, to prove to our peers, to the camera makers, to the television makers, because this is adaptable to video, that there is a solution to keep the trust our subscribers, our viewers have in our content, to make sure that trust is embedded all along its lifespan, everywhere it's displayed, with the image.
All right. This should be my final slide and my final few points. Yeah, we know AI is a fantastic tool, and it really is very useful for some tasks. In AFP, we already use AI for transcription and translation. I think a couple other tasks. But at this point, it's not totally reliable for now. And when we use AI, it's always with human oversight, right? We don't send reports to clients that are not vetted by a human. When we transcribe using AI, the codes that we use for our stories have to be checked before it's used in a story, because the reputation is at risk when there are errors in there. And in terms of visuals, all AFP pictures and all AFP pictures are captured by a camera, and we don't create visual versions of reality using AI. I guess my final point I want to make is some of the things that we see, or some of the visuals that we see circulating online, they might appear harmless. We did a recent report on some YouTube pages creating fake speeches of the new Pope, fake homilies of the new Pope, and the message is quite. Some people would say they're quite harmless. Like it's spreading messages that you would think a Pope would say, but even if they're quite harmless, even if they're seemingly harmless, experts are still cautioning against these sites, because from the things that we've seen, they almost always come from pages that try to farm or build their audiences, and that's quite tricky. They could always pivot to they can farm engagements and pivot to like more nefarious things in the future. So yeah. Final. I think to end, yeah, AI might change how we do journalism, and it is changing how we do journalism. But the core of journalism remains the same, or should remain the same, and our mission is to gather first-hand sources and primary information, and we tell human stories. AI unfortunately cannot tell human stories, well, at this point at least. There are studies upon studies showing AI tends to flatten the diversity of human stories. Because it learns from existing sources, right? I think the one study I'm thinking of is about scholars tested AI use for young Indian students studying in university, and compared essays written by an actual person to an essay written by an AI tool. and it found that it tends to omit the cultural diversity of the person writing. I think if I remember this right, one of the things that was asked was for a student in AI to write about the Hindu festival, Diwali. So the actual person would talk about liking the festival because it's a day for, and then they mention certain goddesses that they pray to. But then the AI model would talk about, Diwali is nice because I have nice breakfast during that day. I mean, it will improve, but it doesn't change the core of journalism. And I would end by quoting what our global news director said. AI forces us to do better at what we do, and to make ourselves stand out in an information ecosystem drowning in low quality information. So yeah, thanks everyone. That's it.
Right. Thank you, Jake. Man, that's really good. Anyway, just to cap what Jake has said, so ito yung difference, no, between the public when the public is posting pictures or videos, no, versus when the media is publishing photos and videos. So lahat ng photos and videos that the media is publishing undergoes cross-checking, verifying, and vetting. And every time, no, it's always madugo, no, sobrang daming process. And we really have to make sure, no, that the contents or the images or even the stories that we publish are true, no, 100% true. Hindi po pwedeng may may parte ng imagination, no. Well, the reason behind that, because we are in the business of conveying facts and objective truth, no. Okay, so nabanggit din kanina ni Jake na during crisis events or maybe, mga major events, no, that's happening around us, no. Almost always, this is the time when this is the time that often spark misinformation. No? We don't know why, but then again, at the same time, no, we go back to what Sir Carl Jo said, no, na nagkaroon na ng democratization, no, sa ating communication sphere. So we now have the technology. Everybody now has the means to participate, no, in sharing information, no? Pero at the same time, no, so Jake said AI generated images today are now increasing. Well, naturally kasi technology is there, no? It's readily available. It's getting better and better every day, no? But at the same time, he says that in AI errors can be detected still, and AI frequently shows all these errors, no. So sometimes minsan nakikita natin, di ba? Sobra ng isang daliri, yung mga letters hindi comprehensible, yung mga images, yung kulay nila hindi mukhang natural, etc., etc., no. But still, no, the question remains, until when? When will be the time? Well, we have to remember, no, we cannot keep up with technology. No? We cannot win the race with technology. Technology is getting better and better every single day. No? So we cannot keep on chasing pixels and checking each pixels. And darating yung time na hindi na natin makikita yung difference. No? Okay. But at the same time, we all need to be reminded that uh, we are now in a time where our environment and our communication sphere is rapidly changing. This is very unprecedented. No? This is something serious. That's what's happening to us is very serious, and this is unprecedented. This did not happen 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, 100 years ago. So, wala tayong pagkukumparahan, wala tayong basis, no, to create what do you call this, no, to learn our lessons from. So, good thing we have to be open with all these courses that's being and trainings that's being offered to us. You know, we have to learn AI. We have to learn this we have to, learn about this new technology. That's going on around us. Okay, so next is, he said that AI revolution came when trust in media is low. We are gonna be honest about it, no? Yeah, the trust in media now is really low. Well, na-explain din natin kanina because of so many factors, no? Because we now have democratization of information. Everyone now can be a source of information. No? So it is increasingly crucial to tell how visuals are captured. So yung element ng honesty, no, sobrang importante. No? There's been a study, there's been some studies, no, this past few years saying that images and photographs and videos, no, or images, no, are now the most potent source, or no, most potent medium for spreading misinformation and fake news, no. So ano na niya, no, nalagpasan niya na yung text as a major source ng ano. Kasi mabilis siya, no. You share it, people, readily understands the message. Isang click mo lang, you can share it. No? Saglit lang, viral na agad. No? So, we have to take that into consideration. No? Why? Because, especially for us journalists, because yun nga, sabi natin kanina, we are in the business of telling the truth and telling facts and being objective. No? So, at the same time, it is also important for us to have media literacy. Dati kasi ang uso lang is, ang media literacy lang is for journalists. No? So dapat ngayon hindi na. No? Parang dumating na tayo sa time na everybody needs to be media literate and everybody needs to be, especially, visually literate nowadays. No? Anyway, so before we proceed, we'll have Q&A, afterwards. But before that, let's have probably a 5-minute break, no? Yung gusto mag-CR or and we have refreshments outside, no? So you are free to get some refreshments outside. Mayroon yatang coffee and some snacks. So let's be back at 11:07. It's now 11:02. All right, see you later. Thank you. Alright, so game na tayo. Anyway, before we start, of course, we would like to thank our sponsors. Cebu Pac, which has been very generous, especially with our projects related to journalism. They have been really been supportive. Even last year, we have many events last year that they supported. Also, First Gen, They also supported us since last year and hanggang ngayon. Of course, last but not the least, SM, which has been really, really supportive, no, since the inception of this program. When we went to them and explained that we are trying to create this lecture series, visual journalism lecture series, and they were really excited about it. And then they provided us with a venue, um, yun, ito, food natin, no? And accommodation for the speakers that we have. So yun, it's good to know that we have supporters that supporting this lecture series, no, not only now but in the future iteration of the lecture. Anyway, so the floor is now open for questions. If you have any questions to ask our speakers today. Actually kanina ang dami ko na ring nailistang mga tanong. Maraming natutunan pero mas marami akong tanong. But we will open the floor to people here and also yung mga nag-participate via Zoom. So for everyone's information, we are also streaming online, but not publicly yet, no. We are live in Zoom, no? So I think there are more than 60 participants ngayon sa Zoom. So, any question? Sige, kung wala pa, kung medyo may hiya pa or i-enjoy pa yung pagkain, I'll start, ano. This question is actually kahit sino yung gustong sumagot. But my question is, why do we need to, be cautious with AI? Not just as journalists, but the public as well.
I would say ang biggest risk for media organizations of AI use is at this point, what we're seeing is highly imperfect the AI tools that we have. Some are very quick and very sophisticated, but all these errors, so yung reputational risk lang of being discovered using AI, there's that risk for media organizations. Ang daming errors na lumalabas pa din with when we use AI. And in terms of visuals, for example, what we'd want to do is our role is really to capture reality, right? And sometimes AI hallucinates images. So as much as we want to say we want to represent the truth, the best representation of the truth is like your camera capturing something, right? It's that conversation is I don't know. I don't think it's easy to accept na what we have right now, despite the meteoric rise in generative AI, ang dami pa ring lacking. So always the need for human oversight. Someone human has to check whatever we publish at the expense of the reputational cost for media organizations publishing erroneous stuff.
I think for even just looking at it from an individual level, and I will keep referring to social media, and remember when they were still called social networks, diba? What this technology was before we fully understood, but we quickly adopted because it seemed innocuous and it seemed fine. But now, social media is a vector for data privacy issues, for disinformation, for just polluting our information ecosystems, and our inability to hold social media platforms accountable at this point. Again, there are attempts, there's some collaborations, but the and the magnitude of the impact does not match the level of collaboration, which is not to invalidate the current efforts, but there need to be amplified efforts if we're to address. So dun pa lang sa level na yun, now we didn't understand the technology. And now, as we saw with Grok AI, diba, my gosh, X is filled with stuff. And then you're gonna use the AI inside of Grok to check the veracity of that. That's two levels of being misinformed as a person in how you're using these tools. And so just on the level of us as individuals, having access to the information that we need. For example, when you look at, like if anyone here uses DeepSeek, and we've seen some of the journalists, and I also posted at some point how DeepSeek will refuse to answer certain questions that are counter to the narratives of the Chinese government. And that means that it has in its training layer the correct information, but it's in its inference and output layers, it is giving you wrong information or is refusing, and therefore it's built as a misinformation machine. And so we're interacting with these things every day. When you think about, for example, the cybersecurity risks that are posed by the ability to find more vulnerabilities, yan, one level yan, scams. And imagine how, right now, it's not that great, right? It can, if you ask it to tell you about itself, about you, give me a biography of me, hit and miss. But if you give it the right sources, or you use information from a data breach, and use that information to social engineer us individually, then that's another attack surface that's incredibly powerful and with the speed. Can you imagine receiving a call from your mom that is actually generative AI created audio, and them asking you for help and then asking you to send money? That's already happening now. So why should we be concerned? Because on multiple levels, there are ways that we are under attack. And so we have to understand the threat levels, and the attack platforms, and where we are vulnerable, and actually where we can build and where we can reinforce ourselves. And I know that right now it's a lot of what's wrong and what's the threat and all of this stuff. But on the other side of it, right, if it can teach you how to build a bomb, it can also teach you to dismantle the bomb, if it has that same training data. So I think we need to be concerned, and that we need to be learning.
All right. Okay. So while we acknowledge all these red flags, ng AI to the public and to the journalism industry, well, I'm actually interested then as well on how AI can help us, especially in the sa atin, sa industry natin sa journalism. And since this is a forum on visual journalism, again, ang dami nating nakikiting red flags pagdating sa images and videos, the use of AI. But on the other hand, it's also interesting to know how can we use AI for our own advantage.
Are the fact-checking tools AI?
I would think there are certain tasks that are part of what we do before, right? In journalism. So I would say I would use the example of transcribing. It's very, very difficult to transcribe, and it's not difficult, but it takes a lot of time for a reporter to properly transcribe everything that we've heard in a news conference, in whatever event. AI is very good at helping with that, so it reduces the time spent for transcribing. Translation is also another thing. So there are these tasks that are part of journalism, basically. But what I think yung best use of AI would be us learning which sort of things are of higher value or valuable, and what things we can we can ask for help from with these tools, and it lets us focus on what we should really do. Again, maybe there are AI tools for meetings if you're into that. So at this point, it's quite it's very useful. It's a fantastic tool for minimizing the time that we spend on these types of tasks, which are part of our verification work, etc. Again, with the I would always say with human oversight, like before something goes out, before we hit publish or submit our stories, it always has to have someone to check was that quote correct, comparing the quote that was transcribed to the actual recording. But these are things that we the other, I think, at the agency we also start using AI for sorting out my facial recognition yata and metadata. Before you would have to manually do these things, right, as part of publishing or part of writing a story, the entire process. But AI is making that easier and di na siya as burdensome as just those valuable time na you would have for more important stuff like actual reporting and talking to people and going out. That's one value and very useful value of AI tools and the ones that we have right now.
You know, one thing that I appreciated about your presentation was the very clear laying out of tools and process for fact-checking. But one thing I want to emphasize is how important human knowledge is to the project. That you knowing world history, background, current events, that makes your fact-checking easier, better. That makes everything better. So nandun pa rin yung very important human element of discernment, and then if you're doing visual, taste, artfulness, all of those things are not things that you can pack in, but very easily, I was trying to think, if I were to build a AI-powered workflow for an aspiring photojournalist, I'd make an AI-powered website. I'd use one of the out-of-the-box tools that I can use to set up my website. I might, on the day of a shoot, I might talk back and forth with the AI dun sa story on what my shot list could be and potential things that I could have. Go out, capture the shots. And then the thing about AI is, like, I think you were referencing this also, it kind of makes everything mid. Right? It brings things to a middle, and that's why it feels flat, it feels boring. And that's why if you're a fantastic writer and you ask it to rewrite you, it sounds awful. But the opportunity here is, what if you're not that good of a writer, but you're really good visually? Then you could feed it your ideas, your prompts, and you can help it to organize what you want there. And then you have your captions ready and you're publishing, and you're sort of able to put up this small solo venture just from that by using AI tools, which maybe if sabit yung grammar mo, you wouldn't have been able to do before. How many of us would be able to make websites and so on and so forth? But nandun pa rin yung craft. Kasi if your photos aren't what they need to be, then hindi pa rin yung papansinin.
Yeah, that's thank you, sir. That's very interesting. So, okay, so bottom line, we can only use AI sa journalism industry, we can only use AI as tools, not as the content itself.
I wouldn't publish anything that didn't go through human thought, touch. Parang kailangan hawakan ng tao yan para maging totoo.
Yeah.
For me. I don't know what that means for you, pero it gets me yung parang, yeah, that's a story.
Yeah. So this is a question for Jake. I mean, in sa AFP, have you ever encountered AI images being submitted to the agency? Or video, for that matter?
I would think the Chinese example, the paraglider one, is a nice, no, not nice, but it's a horrible example of how things could go wrong when things are unverified, right? Because it's really a lot of media organizations publishing who have published the video and had to kill afterwards. There's always that risk, and I think the channel usually would be official sources. Unfortunately, sometimes yeah, there are processes that are based on relationships of trust, for example. Another example I can think of would be I think it's AI as well. The picture of Kate Middleton during
Exactly.
yeah. So yeah, a lot of even news agencies had to kill that picture, but after publishing it because it's from a really trusted source. Then it turns out a lot of things were edited in that picture. So that's the avenue I think now some errors are introduced to or AI images are published accidentally because of lack of verification and because they come from sources that we usually really trust before.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the floor? Questions? Huwag na kayong maya. Sir, the mic is over there.
Hello. Good morning po. I am Lance from GMA News. And my question is for the both of you po. With the rising concerns about AI lately, especially yung pong kay Bato, do you believe that it is time for media outlets to have a concrete policies with the use of AI within the organizations?
Nice question. Yes, the thing is, there should be proper guidelines on AI use. But how the guidelines would look is always uncertain because of just how fast this technology is evolving, right? The things that are true yesterday might not be true today. A lot of tools are being released. They have a lot of features, and the scope is super general. But again, there are basic things that we need to remember. What do we do as journalists, right? It's always that's the bottom line. I mean, it doesn't fit what we'd want, like guidelines. But again, we cannot have like a very detailed thing telling us when you see something like this is how we should react. It's not like a point by point because the technology is not something that we're not at the end stage of this technology. It's technologies, I would say. So, but in the matter of guidelines, there are baseline things. There are baselines, and there are things that we should always remember. So when it comes to, again, I'll repeat the note I mentioned earlier. For example, at AFP, we are guided by these principles, right? When we publish pictures, all the pictures that we publish are taken by our photographers using a camera. That's one thing. It addresses hopefully the issues about images being AI generated. When we release images, when we publish images that are from social media, UGC, we have a very stringent verification process. Someone has to check for the authenticity of those images. So several different things, right? Who originally published them, whether they confirm, whether the details match what is being claimed, whether they're taken in an earthquake or in Tibet or in whatever the country it is. So these guidelines help us in this very challenging environment.
Yeah, our position sa Ethics PH is that every company, not just media, every company should be creating and implementing policies. Almost like, basically, meron kang HR policy, meron kang gender policy, meron kang safe spaces policy, meron kang policy for leaves, whatever else, meron kang policy for AI usage. And this is a huge gap and reputational risk, vulnerability for companies that don't have it. because actually the stats show the formal adoption of AI by companies in general is very low. And yet the adoption of AI usage by individuals is very high. And that means that that's a vulnerability for companies if they have employees who are using it and there's no policy to guide that usage. Basically, they can use it for anything if that policy doesn't exist. And to the point of this isn't the end point of this technology. Yung nga, unlike maybe safe spaces or gender or ganun na, you set it up and then you can probably leave it for a few years and not need to update your labor policies. But specifically for AI, my general advice for people is you set up a task force for this to figure out what apps you're using, and then between 3 to 6 months, you're going to have to update that policy because there might be new technology that's better, because there might be technologies that should not be used anymore. Like there's a bunch of things to consider, but we were part of a competition. We made AI policies in 2023. I'm sure that if I checked my old company's policies, kailangan na i-review at i-update lahat yun. So it's going to be a huge task, but it's something that has to have happened yesterday.
Thank you so much po. Another question.
Okay, sige, sure. And then we'll take another one from, I guess, from the good sir there.
Another question po for Sir Jake po. Yeah. Since sa GMA News po, we have a UGC platform po called UScoop, and it is a platform wherein UScoopers or netizens uploads po videos or pictures taken by sarili po nila. So, with the AFP po, I just want to know po yung verification process ng AFP with regard dun sa UGC content na inyo pong ina-upload sa inyong website po. And now we can adapt sa aming pong UScoop page.
Okay, so with AFP, I think if I could summarize two main things, right? First is if the visual was filmed, who filmed the visual, right? If it's the person who actually filmed and can give their consent for the use of that clip, and if we're able to prove that and they can sign the document, the UGC clearance form, then that's great. The other thing would be the authenticity of what they are sharing, if it's authentic, and that would involve several different. We do several different. We use several different tools, and that's where we practice our digital verification skills, right? First of all, finding if it's a video, if it's old, that disqualifies it from being used. First of all, and then that's where digital verification comes in. I think it would boil down to those two things really, if who has ownership of that image and whether they're authentic. I will plug our digital investigation courses. 16 courses, they're free for everyone to use, and it's really, really useful, I would say, for every journalist working right now to know the basics of digital investigation. These are not like super difficult. Sometimes a lot of misinformation can be caught just by reverse image searching. And a picture or a video, you would know immediately, like this could not have been from, again, the example, it could not have been from India, Pakistan, because it was being shared several months ago before there was that there was that conflict happening in South Asia. So, yeah, digitalcourses.afp.com is the URL.
Thank you po, sir.
All right. Question, you, sir?
Good morning. I'm Paul Villamil from Mapua University. My first question po is for any of you guys po. As future media practitioners and journalists, what would you recommend, or rather, where would you draw the line of us using AI or incorporating AI into our future outputs? How would what ways can you recommend for us to use AI responsibly and to ensure po na it's not direct, we just put the prompt what's asked for us in the chat GPT or in what AI we're using, and we'll just copy paste what the chat says. Like, no, what is there specific prompts, or do we have to be like more specific in the kind of instructions we're putting in the AI for us to make it less AI slop, like you mentioned earlier, but more but yeah, make it less AI slop sounding and looking.
You mean make it look more authentic?
Yes, make it look more authentic. Yes.
Gusto ko yung tanong kasi I think one, you're answering it, but you're also showing how difficult this is going to be to answer. Basically because I can't give you a set of rules right now because I don't know what this is going to look like in 6 months. Right? Once they release a new model, things shift. Honestly, people keep saying, oh, I can't, you can always tell it's AI. But I've actually sent people research papers, which are just like dossiers that I've created using deep research and then having it rewritten by a different AI so that it reads better and all this stuff. So there is a certain level where the technology will be good enough that we can't tell. And the question then for you as a practitioner is, it moves from guidelines and it moves from technological capacity and it enters into the realm of integrity. And I think that's sort of where we need to start thinking. Because if I am I'm a reporter who has great skills at interviewing, can get out into the field, all of this stuff, pero sabit yung English ko. And I did all of that reporting, and I wrote it as best I could, and I had it help me with my grammar. Is that a problem, or is that actually unlock the abilities for someone who maybe needs more work on their grammar, or am I going to invalidate that writing because that person needed to use AI to get up there? That's more an ethical question than it is a set of rules that we need to go by. And so I think journalists individually need to tackle this. But at what point do you feel you're still being honest with the work? Parang pag nagbigay ka sa editor mo, alam mo ba na ikaw yung gumawa ng trabaho na yun? Because, for example, yung binigay ko na yung reading list, someone generated that and they submitted it to their editor and they thought na makakalusot. Right? And so that problem is an integrity problem. It's not a technology problem. And so, again, this integrity thing is going to be what is going to differentiate you as practitioners from everybody else that is going to be on the internet and posting slop. If you can go to a news organization and make yourself trustworthy and they know that whatever you're submitting, maybe you might have used AI, but this is significantly your work, then you can represent it as your work. Now, dun papasok, mahabang usapan yung, how do I quantify your work given what level of research did you do versus did you do with the AI? Did you use AI for this or that? Ayan, dun tayo papasok dun sa tasking and what are the allowed tasks. Again, this is why schools struggle, and this is why other organizations struggle to put policy. Because do you put a percentage? Do you put a ganyan? May mga eskwelahan na every single prompt that you put, you have to list all the prompts that you used. But they'll allow it. So this is not a question that has a definite answer, but it is good that we're asking it.
Yeah, and if I may add to an answer to your question, sa journalism industry, when it comes to pictures and videos, we don't do AI. We don't use AI. Whether we use AI, well, especially yung sa mga pinagtatrabahoan namin, from time to time we receive these memos, dadagdagan yan. Well, one, is that yeah, there we don't use AI because it's not, you know, it's not real. No, we're in the business of pagdating sa images, we are in the business of showing the public what's really happening. No? So, bawal yung may dadagdag ka, may babawasan ka ng elements sa pictures and videos. And even yung tools, no? Recently got a memo saying that even the anti-noise tools, yung noise reduction tools na AI, you cannot use. No? Ganun ka-strict pagdating sa, kaya well, actually one of the reasons why we have where we're having this forum today is that, you know, in the field of visual journalism, the use of AI is really questionable, no? But well, our speakers today, you know, they shared with us that the other uses of AI, you know, in the industry, you know, we can use them as tools, no, to help us with the research, help us detecting fake, no, at paano natin ma-detect yung fake, paano natin ma-detect yung AI, yung mga hindi totoong mga images and videos, so on and so forth. So bottom line, you know, when it comes to journalism, it's a full, we don't use AI sa images and videos, full stop, no? So it ends there, no? You have more question? Sige, pero afterwards, we're gonna be taking in questions from our participants in Zoom. Sige, sir.
This is more of a practical question lang po. Is there a recording po of the Zoom meeting so that we can share this to our...
Yeah. We'll be, you know, hindi natin live today kasi to, you know, to control the participants, not the number, but, you know, the quality of the participants. But we'll be sharing the recording of this on our Facebook page and YouTube page ng FOCAP, so the public can access it.
That's all my questions po. Thank you for your
All right,
time.
thank you very much.
Just wanted to add dun sa sinabi mo, Jess, no? The professionally captured image is going to be so high value in a world of AI slap. Yun talaga.
Anyway, okay. Kier? Ready ka na? All right, so we have actually this is for Jake. We have a question from one participant from Zoom, no? From Mr. Ryan Hernandez. And he sent a link, no? His question is, have you seen this footage from Gaza, supposedly from Reuters? Oh, Mika. Shared by ABS-CBN recently. What do you think is this? AI generated po ba? So what do you think, Jake?
I wish I could tell you that's AI or not AI just by looking at the video. But I think I might be able to say what I would do to verify that if that's a question posed to me. First of all, the first thing I would ask is who took that video. Was it one person who took several? Because it's the entire footage has several different clips, right? There are cuts in there. So that's my first question. Who took the video? Maybe Reuters would have the metadata for this when they originally published it. So was it someone living in Gaza? Was it a Reuters journalist? It's not like, I mean, as much as, I mean, I don't know if digital verification has gotten to this prestige level that everyone thinks we can look at an image and say it's AI. It doesn't work like that. So these are, I would start by checking who filmed that clip. And once that's clear, who did the editing for this one? Because there are visible cuts in that footage. So was that Reuters? Do they have the full thing? And then maybe the question, the one who asked the question would, I don't know, were there signs they think that, were there signals that tell them it's...
Yeah, probably, probably what prompted the question, well, from the viewer, no, the one who saw the video, was maybe there was something there. Maybe the footage was so clean, no? Well, we can tell what is HD and what is Ultra HD and what is 4K.
Yeah.
But I think this, from the quality of it, it looks 8K, no?
It's super clear. It's, I mean, could go either way. Someone might have it might be a journalist who filmed this. I mean, it might be a Reuters journalist. So it depends. We don't have that information just by looking at the video. So someone, and if it's someone on the ground, not a journalist, but they have a nice phone, and they have the metadata to show it. So these are the steps that we take when we verify these images.
Yeah.
And we sometimes we get lots of very stunning images we're not able to verify, so we're not able to publish. Just a recent India plane crash one, a lot of stunning images online, but because they're taken from very close locations, so we're not able to see where it was taken. But yeah, again, I would need, if we're digitally verifying AI content, we would need lots and lots of evidence before we're able to say confidently 100% this is AI generated or not AI generated. It's not just by looking at a footage or at footage.
Yeah, but at the same time, we saw that the footage was from Reuters, and normally when we see the provenance of these images and videos are coming from the these big news agencies like Reuters, AFP, AP, and Getty, we are automatically, or most probably, no, not most probably, but automatically we assume that these are legit and that these images and videos, already went through the proper vetting process. No? So, but at the same time, it's really good, for us to be still critical, pa rin, no, to question the veracity of these contents or these images that we are seeing.
I think just to add, that's why increasingly, as mentioned earlier, it's becoming more important for us in the media. So to be able to show when that we have captured the image, we can prove that we've captured images ourselves, right? So we use this certain camera, and so efforts like, for example, digital watermarks captured from the exact moment a photographer or a video journalist took the visuals, that might be one way in the future for us to combat these, to answer these questions, and to be able to prove that it's really our journalist who took this picture. And we can prove that because it was watermarked.
Yeah,
I don't know.
indeed. Anyway, one more question from Zoom. And then afterwards we'll take another question from the floor. Okay, so this is from Mr. Arnel de la Cruz, but the question is actually intended for FOCAP, and his question is: is FOCAP lobbying on the passage of Artificial Intelligence Act in the Philippines? Is the group involved in crafting and be part of the working group? Well, to answer you, sir, we have not yet come up with the position, or no. I mean, this is actually my first time hearing about said act. So, but yeah, we're actually the FOCA board is always very active in these kinds of discourses. So maybe when we pag na-encounter namin, we will study it. Okay, so another question from the floor. Yes, unahin, sige, si ma'am muna. Yeah, one ma'am with a white blouse.
Seeing it now while she's on her way, but there were 16 pieces of legislation filed in the last Congress. Pero they're all expired na. So everything will be refiled. So it's a good moment for everyone involved, because our advocacy also is that AI will require a whole of society approach with multiple stakeholders crafting these. A lot of the current bills are around either building mga AI bodies or AI councils, or around labor protection. So, and then artist groups are trying to form around copyright defense naman. So, perfect timing.
All right.
Hi, this is a question for both of the speakers. So, it came out in a Reuters digital news report, like a very recent one, that chatbots, AI chatbots, have become an emerging news source. So, what opportunities or challenges does this spell for media? Basically, Philippine media landscape, and basically your reaction to it.
I'm not sure. It's I've mentioned that earlier as well, but it could be a challenge, right? It could mean people are increasingly not reading news reports as we have, or I don't know. I haven't seen how. I don't use ChatGPT for myself. I have no personal knowledge of how it appears on phones, but like if I would think that's one thing increasingly people might not be, and that's the flip side of that report as well. Like those who consume the news increasingly move away from traditional sources of information, right? So less television, less newspapers, and more social media. So that might be what we're looking at in the future. But again, hard to tell.
Okay, so like mini lecture on how these things work now, which is that. Yeah.
I think it's like you put your question in the chatbot, like about what's the news, for example, about latest on the Israel-Iran conflict, something like that, instead of like going directly to a website and reading the article.
Yeah. No, but the mini lecture on like how they work is, you have to understand that they're probability machines, right? And so, actually, if you put that prompt, in all likelihood, you won't get the same answer twice, because it's filtering through its training data set and putting out things based on weights. It doesn't understand, right? It's processing, it's transforming meaning based on the weights of language. And so we can fairly understand this. But if you're going to the chatbot for news, then you have to know that like you have to activate a bunch of the things on there. The web search needs to be right, but when it does a web search, where is it pulling from? So for example, that's why I have that Grok problem of because X will accept all inputs, they don't filter anything. So, and like the internet is full of garbage. And so the concern for consumers is that in all likelihood, they're getting a probability thing, unless you're guiding it properly. So personal usage, but when I was on paid ChatGPT, you could give it tasks and stuff. So I had like every Monday morning, I want you to provide me a briefing of the top 5 stories in AI this week. And it can do that relatively well. And maybe that's like the dream use case if you program it properly. But if people are using it as a search engine to give them information, and they're trying to use it to replace search and social because they don't want to deal with those things, that is actually a use case that we need to understand, because that's an opportunity in the market. People don't want to have to go through those. So what do they want? They want something that they can easily access information from. However, the current way that it's constructed, and if you lack media literacy, AI literacy, you don't use it properly, then that's a problem. Larger business problem is this discourages people from reading the actual content, actual stories from the websites from which, so dun babalik yung slide ko about how are we going to derive revenue if dun kinukuha yung information. And so it does betray a desire for information and news. It shows us that the current channels are not what people want. They want a more usable interface. And so they're turning to this thing. And so that's not an answer, that's a question for, okay, so now we have all of this information, what do we build on top of that information?
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Unfortunately, we only have time for 2 questions. So, saktong-sakto. We have 3. Teka, ano oras na ba? Kasi hanggang 12 lang tayo rito eh. So, let's see kung kasya pa sa oras natin. Okay, simulan natin kay ma'am.
My name is Angel Aguibidar from Mapua University, and my question for both speakers is, as AI technology is becoming more widespread and used as a tool for both misinformation and as a tool to check for fake pictures and videos, how can journalists denounce the use of AI as a source of misinformation while emphasizing that it can be used as a news tool with strict guidelines without coming off as hypocritical?
Such a that's like 5 questions. Hold on. Go muna.
Sorry, just wanted to check what you mean hypocritical, like in terms of, that's strong.
Yes. While AI is, because AI has been used as a source of misinformation, altered images and videos, but it is also used as a, like previously said before, as a tool to verify images and news sources. How can, as journalists, denounce AI as AI misinformation without coming off as a hypocrite, because reporters nowadays are using AI tools to...
I would say from my perspective, working in misinformation is misinformation. It doesn't really matter if it's AI or just a misused post or a fabricated Viber message sent by your tita. That's what we have to combat, and that's what we have to fact check every time we see them online. That's what our fact checkers work on. I don't think it's controversial to say that this AI revolution will shape how the media will be in the next, I don't know, maybe next month, in the next few years. So there's no conflict in using AI tools to make us better journalists and in combating misinformation, whether they are generated by AI or whether they're just photoshopped or just a misrepresented image. So that is what we have to constantly be on the lookout for, and that's what we need to fact check when we see them online.
So on one level, na transparency. So communicating AI policies publicly. So I think New York Times does this. They have a published AI policy for when and can and cannot be used and all that stuff. But I think one of the ideas I want to advance here is that when we say AI, this is not a monolithic thing. AI is a bunch of different kinds of tools and systems, and figuring out which of those tools and systems make sense in the workflow. So for example, we don't want to make AI generated videos, but there's certain apps that I use where I'll do a 1-hour recording and then AI will automatically generate the captions, and then it will recommend to me 4 or 5 different clips that it has already automatically edited, right, from the interview. And so there's no hypocrisy there. It's just a tool that I use to quickly cut the video. So transparency in usage. I think kasi the hypocrisy stand is like, gumamit ka na AI and then you're imagining that it's all just one thing. Again, if you understand it's many different tools, then you're just using a tool, right? There's no, like, let's just say you're a hypocrite for using Microsoft Word or something.
Okay, thank you for the answer.
All right. Sir? And then, pag may time pa, si Sir yung last.
Hello po. Good morning po. I am Aldi Rodriguez po, Master Trainer for the ASEAN Digital Literacy Program and AI Ready ASEAN Program under the Break the Fake movement. So, may question lang po ako. In the current fast-facing world of technology and information dissemination, what basic ways or advice would you give us, youth, students, and the general public to determine authentic, verified news and information across social media platforms in relation to the usage of AI towards information, content creation for public consumption and awareness? Thank you po. Sige po, dandanin ko lang po. Ano po yung advice or basic ways po na pwede nyo maturo sa amin towards the youth, the students, alam ko most parang nakita ko po may mga students, and yung general public as a whole po, yung ano po yung ways na pwede nilang ma-determine yung isang information na nakikita nila sa social media, paano nila ma-verify ito in the usage of AI towards those information creations po.
Pahirap ng pahirap.
I don't know. I don't want to say there's no one single thing that we can do, but that's probably my answer. There's no one single thing we can do to. I remember one time that this is very recent. I do fact checking most of my journalism career, and when I saw that, do you remember that video of that kangaroo boarding Qantas aircraft? I was like, it was such a feel-good visual. It was like, it makes you feel things, right? And then afterwards, fact checkers started saying, it's AI generated. And I'm like, yeah, well, I didn't share it, but like, that's the thing, right? Always having that, I don't know, alertness to everything that we see online, and we're not always on all the time. But when we see, I guess it's okay. Not it's okay. When we're very emotional and when we see content online, it's always quite useful to take a step back and think like, where is this from? Who published it? Is the source something that that I know is trustworthy? And even if I know they're trustworthy, are they saying they have verified this? It takes a while, and even if you have that faculty, I mean, I don't want to be like super negative, but like it has to be there every time you see content on social media. We don't have the usual guardrails that we used to have, unfortunately, before. With Twitter, that blue verified tag was very useful before it was replaced with a different model. With Facebook, we used to be able to, I think, trust a bit of content moderation. That's not. So increasingly, it's becoming more and more difficult. But having that alertness to everything that you see online, I think that's one way to not fall into misinformation.
Yeah, I mean, yung mga trainings on fact-checking, they always tell us, provenance is very, very important. It's really important to know where the information came from. So you have to verify sino yan, ano yung background niya, ano yung, pagkakatiwalaan ba yan o hindi. Anyway, I hope that answered your question. And let's give the floor for the last question. Sorry, last na to. We really need to close na.
So, good afternoon po. I'm Randy from Far Eastern University. And my question is for the either of you. So, as a communication student and a campus journalist, we have been saying that AI is the future and it's going to be part of the newsrooms. So my question is, should we start early and should we integrate AI into journalism or other related curriculum in colleges?
My simple answer is elementary pa lang. Like we figure out what the ideal age is and we begin to introduce these ideas, but we limit which kinds of AI are used, and it's not limited to journalism. Like literally, kailangan natin ng AI literacy as early as is safe. We're seeing kasi, right, for teenagers, a lot of teenagers are using AI chatbots as companions, and it's really affecting their maturity, development. So we need to understand what versions of AI are safe to expose young people to, and then begin to introduce those tools. My main example is when I was in high school, wala pang, like, I didn't learn Excel. And so there's like an entire generation under me na lahat magaling mag-Excel, and I feel so behind because I don't have those tools. And if we see it as a tool, right, then the disadvantage of someone not having access to that is going to be big. So introducing it at the point where we can continue to be competitive in whatever field we choose is important.
All right. Again, thank you very much for coming, for taking the time and putting the effort in coming here. Hopefully, yung program natin ng yung Romeo Gacad Visual Journalism Lecture Series ay hindi lang maging once a year, no? So we are actually thinking of putting up, kahit online forums and online classes. So yung mga sinasabi nila, yung mga suggestions na ating mga speakers today, like training programs, no, on AI and AI literacy, media literacy. Hopefully we can do that and share it with you, no, especially for you young ones, no, who's going to be our future journalists, future editors, or whatever. Even kahit simpleng mamamayan, no, today really needs to learn media literacy, visual literacy. And nadagdagan na naman, AI literacy pa, no? Ang dami na natin kailangang pag-aralan na bago, no? Anyway, so again, maraming salamat sa inyo. Maraming salamat din sa mga sponsors ng ating nitong Romeo Gacad Visual Journalism Lecture Series. And see you again. Okay, mukhang magpipicture taking daw yata. So we formally close today's program. Maraming salamat.